defenders of the night. We are Gargoyles.
Gargoyles. Season 2 explored. Do you remember the Gargoyles? The ones that turned to stone during the day, but fought against Xanatos's shrewd mechanizations at night. If not, this video will definitely jog your memory and reminisce about the times when fighting evil was easy. This Disney animated series by Greg Weisman was a mass favourite that led to video game adaptations, fan conventions, and even spin-off comics. In 2023, a live-action reboot was also announced for Disney+. If you are curious to find out how the Gargoyles found their way into New York City and made some friends, or maybe foes, along the way, please head over to our channel and watch our Season 1 video. Today, we will explore what happened in Season 2 of the Gargoyles, and this is going to be a long one, so get ready with your drinks and munchies as we dig into the story.
Xanatos.
It's nice to see you.
Leader of the Pack. The first episode of this season has Coyote, a new masked person in a super suit, climbing up Rikers Island prison facility and breaking into it. When Coyote arrives to break their cell, Fox can be seen reading Kafka's The Metamorphosis, and Hyena is trying to kill a cockroach. Dingo also helps Jackal and Wolf to get free. Before escaping, Hyena tries to kill a female guard, but Fox is suspiciously well behaved as she saves the guard's life and refuses to leave, willing to serve her complete sentence. The rest of the pack escapes from the prison with Coyote's help and his unique powers. Elisa brings the news of the pack escaping to the Manhattan clan, and Lexington is already fired up with his hate and anger. He insists on investigating the Pack Media Studios as Brooklyn and Bronx join him. However, the others feel investigating Xanatos would be a better idea. From this episode onwards, we get an opening narration by Goliath, so you get a quick recap on related events, a continuity reminder, and maybe some plot-wise hints. Once inside their aircraft, the pack questions Coyote about his identity, and Wolf challenges him. Coyote knocks him out, and as he removes his helmet and mask, he is revealed to be Xanatos in person. Xanatos cunningly blames Fox for it, and urges the pack to join him in finishing the Gargoyles. Meanwhile, Goliath, Hudson, and Broadway arrive at the eerie building, but Owen informs them that Xanatos is not there, further hinting about the Pack Media Studios. Lex, Bronx, and Brooklyn keep a watch on the studio as it gets swarmed by the police. Brooklyn tries to dissuade Lex from stepping into the trap, but he won't listen. Once inside the studios, they face the Pack and Coyote, but are quickly subdued and captured. Hudson, Goliath, and Broadway arrive at the empty studio and notice signs of struggle when the phone rings, and Owen invites them to a soiree on Oceana Maru in the bay. As Bronx and Lex try to claw the insides of a container on a ship, Brooklyn wonders why it's always them, which is a reminder of the events when Macbeth captured them. The pack prepares to fight the Gargoyles on the deck when they see Goliath and his friends approaching. As a fight ensues, the captured Gargoyles come out of a ripped door. Coyote uses his mind-altering ray on Goliath during the fight, but Goliath can withstand it. But the dude is surprised when Coyote's bashed head looks like the one from the Terminator movie. Clearly, Xanatos is on another level of narcissism if he has robots looking like him. Goliath rips off the Coyote robot's head and hurls it, while the rest of the Gargoyles also defeat the others. The fight sets the ship on fire, and as the pack hijacks Coyote's aircraft, Brooklyn gets knocked over by a blast. Lex makes a hard choice between following the pack or saving Brooklyn, and as he decides to save his friend, the pack leaves. The Coyote head also jets off as the ship starts to sink, forcing the Gargoyles to abandon the ship. Afterward, Fox receives an early parole for her exemplary behaviour and meets with her lover, Xanatos, outside the prison. It's definitely a Xanatos gambit, as he has not only tested the robot prototype called Coyote, but also got Fox out of prison. But that's not all, as Xanatos kisses Fox and proclaims love as more important than revenge. Can we take his word for it? Metamorphosis. In one of New York's alleys, an old man with a cane and a creepy smile convinces a homeless woman called Maggie Reed to work for him. Somewhere else, on another day, Elisa meets her brother Derek near a private airport. Derek still works for Xanatos and believes him, but Elisa knows better than to force her views on him. That night, a winged creature escapes from the labs of Genu Tech as the Gargoyles also wake up from their daytime sleep. Broadway and Brooklyn fly out and notice a female gargoyle lurking in an alley. At first, they mistake the female gargoyle for Demona. However, they are startled to see that the gargoyle with a lion-like face is another female, who most definitely is Maggie Reed. Brooklyn develops a crush on Maggie and wants to help her, but she refuses and gets captured by Genu Tech employees. Maggie leaves a collar with the organization's name, which Brooklyn and Broadway show to others. Owen informs Xanatos that Genu Tech has been hiring mercenaries, and Xanatos decides to visit Dr. Savarius, who leads Genu Tech laboratories. Derek insists on joining Xanatos and is a bit taken aback when Dr. Savarius reveals that he has been using Xanatos's funding to splice animal DNAs with humans to create more gargoyles. Savarius explains that the gargoyles use solar energy, so he uses electric eels to create a mutagen. He also explains that the mercenaries were hired to catch the escaped test subjects. As Derek starts to doubt Xanatos, the shrewd businessman acts remorseful and clueless. Savarius tries to shoot Xanatos with a dart loaded with the mutagen, but Derek comes in between and gets hurt by the dart instead. Elisa and her detective partner Matt Bluestone arrive at the place, and Xanatos threatens Savarius to make an antidote for Derek quickly. Derek's features start to change as he mutates. Maybe for this reason, the episode shares its name with Franz Kafka's novel Metamorphosis. The situation gets messier when the gargoyles also break into Genu Tech to save Maggie. The commotion causes the antidote made for Derek to smash and spill. The gargoyles escape with the unconscious female mutate, and Dr. Savarius tries to stop them. However, a shove from Goliath causes the scientist to collide with the electric eel's tank. Dr. Savarius gets electrocuted, and Xanatos examines his nerves, proclaiming him to be dead, now turned into a mutate. Derek blames the gargoyles for ruining his chance to get an antidote and swears revenge. So far, Xanatos's plan goes well, and he promises to help Derek and the others find an antidote. Maggie wakes up and tells her name to the gargoyles, but she is shocked when the gargoyles turn to stone at dawn. If you are wondering why Maggie has not turned, it's because she is powered by electric eels. This also ensures that Savarius's mutates have the power of electricity. Elisa and Matt discover that Xanatos owns Genu Tech, while the gargoyles find that Maggie has fled while they have slept. All arrive at Castle Wyvern, where Derek, Maggie, and other mutates are adjusting to their new wings. They foolishly believe Xanatos will help revert them to humans. Derek tries to hide his identity from Elisa and names himself Talon, but Elisa realizes the truth, and as verbal spats turn into a fight, Talon accidentally shocks Elisa. The characters of Talon and Savarius are developed from the character CatScan, who was intended to be a mad scientist who mutated himself. Derek feels guilty for shocking Elisa and flies away. Brooklyn also gets his heart broken, as Maggie realizes Brooklyn wants her to be his mate. Elisa promises to take down Xanatos, but breaks down once they are in the clock tower. Later, Owen brings a younger-looking Savarius to meet Xanatos, revealing that the old man's makeup and subsequent death were all an eyewash by our mastermind, Xanatos. Legion. The episode begins with Coldstone, who was introduced in the first season as a reawakened cyborg gargoyle, but had drowned in the river. Coldstone awakens from his deep slumber and remembers his time from the past when he saw his female mate getting cozy with Goliath. The dream also has another gargoyle who sows jealousy and mistrust, instigating Coldstone against Goliath. After waking up, Coldstone trashes a research facility to steal some data, and a flicker in his eyes suddenly changes his attitude, and he can't recall what he is doing there. This scene pays homage to Robocop, 1987, where Robocop retrieved data in a similar way. Back at the clock tower, Elisa involves Lex in testing a new virtual reality program. Unaware that Lex is also testing the program, Matt wears the main visor as he controls the automated machine called Recap. As the police surround the research facility, Matt sends the machine inside the building to follow Coldstone. Interestingly, the machine also bears the mark of Xanatos Corporation. The machine tries to use tear gas and electrocution on Coldstone, but nothing works. Coldstone destroys it and escapes as Goliath and Lex follow after him. After Coldstone and Goliath reconcile, they take him to the clock tower where Coldstone's behavior changes once again. Coldstone appears more demure and looks confused this time. Coldstone gets startled by his own reflection in the mirror, and in a state of panic, he flies out. As he falls in front of a building on the bay, Coldstone's character changes once again, but this time to a more menacing one that hates Goliath. The episode is titled Legion, as a biblical reference to the Gospel of Mark, where a man was exorcised of demons and called himself Legion. The title references the fact that Coldstone is possessed by several souls. Lex tells Eliza about Coldstone, and Elisa informs him that instead of downloading military files, Coldstone has mistakenly downloaded a virus that is now affecting his brain. Meanwhile, the three souls of the Gargoyles from past torments Coldstone as he continuously switches between the characters. Thankfully, Lex and the other Gargoyles reach there, and Lex connects his own recap machine to Coldstone. Lex explains that the problem must be solved from within Coldstone's mind. Goliath volunteers to go inside Coldstone's mind, where he finds Castle Wyvern and a virus devouring everything. Xanatos appears on top of the castle in his red power suit, but he explains that he is only a program created by Xanatos that infused sorcery and cybernetics to reawaken Coldstone. The Gargoyles from the flashback appear to be Othello and his mate Desdemona, while the evil one is referred to as Iago as he instigates Othello against Goliath. These characters are references to the play written by Shakespeare, where Iago makes Othello believe that his wife Desdemona is cheating on him. Goliath fights the virus, the Xanatos program, and Iago inside Coldstone's head, while Lex receives a message from Elisa that Matt is tracking and approaching them. Desdemona convinces Othello that she is not cheating, and that Goliath is his trusted friend. However, it's too late, as Iago and the Xanatos programs take on a gigantic size and merge. He captures Desdemona and reveals his inner desire to be one with her. This is an alteration from Shakespeare's play, where Iago had no romantic desires for Desdemona. In the outside world, the Gargoyles try to stop the police from approaching. As Iago gets defeated and devoured by the virus, Othello asks Goliath to return to his body. Othello finally reunites with Desdemona as they prepare to combat the virus. After the Gargoyles escape with Coldstone's body, Detective Matt finds a recap visor lying on the ground. At the end of the episode, Owen is revealed to have obtained recap under Xanatos' order. Xanatos definitely has some plans with the computer virus that recap has picked up. Back at the clock tower, Coldstone's body remains on standby as Goliath hopes he will one day come back.
You caught me in a foul mood, monster!
A lighthouse in the Sea of Time. At the beginning of this episode, two archaeologists, Lydia Duane and Arthur Morwood Smith, find scrolls of Merlin hidden in a cavern. Elisa informs the Gargoyles that she is tasked to escort the archaeologists to deliver the scrolls to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The Gargoyles speculate if the scrolls contain real magical spells, and Broadway gets teased for being unable to read. During transportation, the archaeologists' ship gets attacked by Harrier jets, which foreshadows that the thieves are employed by Scottish Macbeth. The thieves snatch the scrolls from Lydia and try to get away in their jets, but Hudson is able to grab one of them. However, the pilot stuns Hudson, who falls into the sea while holding the scroll canister. Broadway also secretly hitches a ride on one of the jets, and as the thieves arrive at a private hangar, Broadway tries to get away with it. He is found by Macbeth and knocked out. The thieves are named Banquo and Fleance, which is another reference to Shakespeare's Macbeth. All this while, Elisa and the other Gargoyles suspect that Xanatos must be behind the theft, but when the Gargoyles arrive at Castle Wyvern, Owen smirks and denies the allegations. Hudson washes up ashore in front of a mansion, and a blind man called Geoffrey Robbins and his dog Gilgy find him. Robbins provides a shoulder to Hudson and takes him inside. Meanwhile, Macbeth ties Broadway inside their jet as they try to locate the scroll. Macbeth shares how Merlin helped a king and his kingdom, which makes Broadway feel that Macbeth must be recounting the tales as if he were present. Macbeth brushes it off, saying he only knows about it by reading, which impresses Broadway. Robbins shows the books he has written to Hudson, and realizes Hudson can't read them. Robbins shares that he was blinded by a shrapnel injury during the Vietnam War and had a feeling that Hudson was also a soldier. The duo definitely has other similarities, such as Hudson, who also has one defective eye, and a pet dog, Bronx. As the two veterans talk, Hudson shares how ashamed he feels admitting to his clan that he can't read, and Robbins offers to help. However, as dawn approaches, Hudson hurries out with the scroll and petrifies on the wall outside. When Macbeth's jet arrives at Robbins, it's already dawn. Macbeth introduces himself as Lennox Macduff to question Robbins about Hudson. While leaving, Macbeth notices the scroll canister in Hudson's hand and removes it. On the other hand, the other Gargoyles visits Owen again, who now indirectly directs them towards Macbeth. After sundown, Hudson again approaches Robbins, who informs him about Macduff. Although Wiseman's take on Macbeth is based on real history, we can't help but notice that he definitely took some pages out of Shakespeare's playbook. Robbins helps Hudson find Macbeth's address from a phone book, and all the Gargoyles arrive at Macbeth's place. Surprisingly, the scrolls only contain the life story of Merlin, and not any spells. Goliath demands Macbeth to release Broadway in exchange for not burning the scrolls. Broadway declares that the scrolls are still magical as they transport readers to another world. Macbeth feels the scrolls are worthless and frees Broadway. He also gives the scrolls to the Gargoyles, but Goliath decides to return them to the museum with Elisa's help. Broadway and Hudson decide to learn reading, while Robbins gets inspired to write a new book.
Destroy you! Ugh! Goliath, run! I'll handle Demona.
We'll handle her.
The Mirror. The villains of the Gargoyles universe always chase mystical artifacts that will give them some sort of leverage. In this one, Demona sneaks into a museum to steal Titania's mirror, but Elisa follows her disguised as a security guard. Demona cleverly lures Elisa and Goliath out, while two henchmen steal the mirror and deliver it to her mansion. Demona uses the mirror to summon the trickster Puck. Back at the clock tower, the Gargoyles explain that Titania is the queen of the third race, like elves and gargoyles and the children of Oberon. Apart from historical artifacts, Shakespeare is also a constant theme impacting the stories of the Gargoyles. Demona mocks Puck for serving humans, further foreshadowing future events. However, the term humans was used instead of him by Disney to remove any references to Satanism. Demona wishes to eradicate all humans, but Puck says it's impossible, and discovers that her feelings for Goliath are the real reason for Demona's anger. Demona is jealous of Elisa and orders Puck to remove a human like her. Puck obliges, but changes Elisa to a gargoyle in his trickster way. As a result, Elisa forgets ever being a human, and the other Gargoyles look at her with awe. This episode is known to be producer Greg Weisman's favorite standalone episode, which is understandable as it breaks the monotony of watching the same gargoyles and human trope. Also, pop culture shows featuring tricksters like Puck and Loki are always mischievously funny. Unaware of what actually has happened, Demona forces Puck to use the same spell on every human in Manhattan. Puck tells her it can only be done from somewhere else, so they go on top of the Twin Towers, where Puck recasts his spell using transmitters and antennae that turn every living person in the city into a gargoyle. It's a coincidence that the episode originally aired on September 11th, 1995, which is 7 years before the attack on the World Trade Center. In the meantime, Goliath takes Elisa for flying lessons, and the two share romantic moments until they witness the changes in humans. Demona is also shocked by the outcome, and when the Gargoyles confront her, she throws the mirror over the ledge and flies away. Hudson recovers the mirror, while others chase Demona to a subway. Although it's a bit unsettling to see Gargoyles humanly dressed and fit in the subway train, it works in favor of our trio of Gargoyles, who finally gets noticed by some females. Furious with the outcome, Demona orders Puck to turn the gargoyles into humans, and this time Puck changes the Manhattan clan to humans, forcing Gargoyle Elisa to save human Goliath from falling. It was quite clever for designers to draw the human versions of the gargoyles as their respective voice actors. So Goliath is black like Keith David, Broadway has blonde hair, Lex is black, and Brooklyn is white. Ed Asner, who has often played old men, finally gets drawn as himself for Hudson. Puck reminds Demona that the changes can work in her favor, so Demona tries to kill the Manhattan clan, but as the clan tries to defend, they are interpreted as monsters by the human-turned gargoyles. The fight also causes Bronx to transform into a dog. The fight ends with Elisa saving Goliath and defeating Demona. Once Puck returns everyone to normal, Goliath lets him go, but the gargoyles feel sorry for being unable to watch the sunrise. Elsewhere, Demona enjoys the first rays of the sun, but is shocked to find that Puck has changed her to be human during the day. The Silver Falcon. Remember Elisa's partner Matt Bluestone, the conspiracy theorist? Well, this episode begins with Matt arriving at a warehouse-like place, but before he can go further, someone switches on the lights and he gets ambushed by unexpected people, leaving the viewers in suspense. The next scene shows Broadway watching a similar black and white noir detective movie at Elisa's apartment when she gets a call from Captain Chavez. Elisa now keeps her gun safely in a lockbox in one of the kitchen drawers since she has learned her lesson from being accidentally shot by Broadway. Chavez informs Elisa that Matt has been missing for 48 hours, so Elisa leaves to find him. While Elisa knocks on Matt's apartment door, a man in a ski mask looks for something in Matt's apartment while leaving a mess behind. Broadway, dressed in a trench coat, secretly observes the development. But when he sees the intruder aim his gun at the door, Broadway attacks him. Although the man tries to escape, he gets caught, and Elisa finds a note from Matt's calendar book. Soon, a booby trap blows up the apartment, and Broadway jumps with Elisa and the masked man. The masked man escapes from their clutches, and Broadway insists on joining Elisa in her investigation process. According to Greg Wiseman, Broadway, getting influenced by noir detective films and wearing a trench coat and a fedora, is also a reference to Ben Grimm, aka The Thing from Fantastic Four comics, who dresses in a similar way. Matt's ex-partner from the FBI, Martin Hacker, tells Elisa that Matt has been looking for a clue regarding the Illuminati and shows her a letter that Matt had obtained. The letter is written by Mace Malone and addressed to someone with the initials DD. The letter also mentions the Silver Falcon. Soon, 3 armed men confront Elisa, and although Broadway is able to catch 2 of them, one guy escapes. Elisa and Broadway then go to the given address, where an elderly man called G.F. Benton greets Elisa. The office has a history and link to the Illuminati, so Elisa sends the man to Captain Chavez for safety. There, she also discovers an old picture of Mace and DD. The wild goose chase finally lands Elisa and Broadway at the Silver Falcone bar, which is now abandoned and is the same place Matt visited at the beginning of the episode. The detective duo finds glasses instructing men to melt down a wall in the basement while Matt is kept blindfolded and tied. Glasses is Tony Draken's right-hand man, who was introduced in the same episode in which Elisa was accidentally shot. Being aware of Elisa and Broadway, Glasses causes a blast that buries them under rubble. Although Broadway protects Elisa, he quickly turns to stone as the sun rises. Elisa hides Broadway, but allows the henchman to find her. Tony Draken enters the scene just as a safe is discovered behind the walls. Draken now flaunts a strand of white hair, which is probably due to Draken being traumatized by the gargoyles. Draken informs that Mace Malone and his grandfather, Dominic Draken, had stolen uncut jewels in the 20s, which were stashed here. However, an empty safe with a note mentioning the wrong falcon frustrates Draken. Elisa offers to lead Tony to the real place in exchange for Matt and her safety. After sundown, Broadway leaves the basement and finds the note. He heads out to help Elisa after reading the note with some difficulty. Elisa takes Draken to a building opposite Mace Malone's old office, and on a ledge with a silver falcon gargoyle head. She finds a bag with the jewels inside the falcon's beak and notices Broadway. As Elisa jumps with the jewels, Broadway saves her but follows Draken instead. Broadway finally captures Draken as he saw in the movie, but his trench coat doesn't survive all the actions. Benton appears at the Falcon, revealing himself to be Dominic Draken. However, he soon realizes that Mace has double-crossed him, as there are marbles instead of jewels inside the bag. The Mafias get arrested, Matt gets a lesson, and Elisa thanks her partners for the mission. Eye of the Beholder. Did you miss Xanatos? Well, he is back in the scene, and on October 1st, he proposes to Fox with the Eye of Odin. On October 30th, Elisa emerges from a costume shop and finds a man running away screaming. As Elisa investigates, she encounters a werewolf-like creature wearing the Eye of Odin and gets saved when the police fleet arrives. Soon after, Fox arrives at the eerie building wearing only a trench coat and the Eye of Odin. News reports suggest that the werewolf has started appearing since October 4th and has only increased its frequency, making Xanatos and Owen suspect Fox. As the night of Halloween arrives, the Gargoyles rejoice for being able to go out without people suspecting them. However, Elisa approaches with the news of the werewolf. At the Eyrie building, Xanatos seeks to borrow the Eye of Odin from Fox, but she refuses it and turns into the werefox creature. While Xanatos and his men try to tranquilize her, werefox still escapes. Owen informs that her fast metabolism can kill Fox, and Xanatos follows her to a meat shop in his Steel Clan power suit. During the confrontation, Xanatos' suit malfunctions, but Fox doesn't kill him as she momentarily realizes what she is doing. Those of you who have seen Predator 2 would find the scene similar. It is explained that Fox was unwilling to return the Eye of Odin as its magical properties create a strong desire in the wearer to keep it. The situation kind of reminds us of the ring from Lord of the Rings. Goliath and Elisa arrive at the place tracking the werefox, and when Goliath subdues her, Xanatos appears and requests them not to interfere. He doesn't reveal the werefox's identity and attempts to remove the Eye of Odin from an unconscious werefox, but gets zapped and the werefox escapes. Xanatos returns to Castle Wyvern and shares his plan to seek the Manhattan Clan's help with Owen. Goliath and Elisa arrive there to question him and refuse to believe that Fox is the creature and that Xanatos loves her. The trio enjoys Halloween with the humans, and they witness Elisa and Goliath appear as Beauty and the Beast, reenacting the titular dance. This is the first time Elisa has appeared as a Disney princess. This scene is rather unique, as it predates Disney's hiring African Americans like Toni Braxton and H.E.R. to play Belle in staged productions. The dance is, however, interrupted when Goliath mistakes a man in costume for werefox. Goliath realizes the need to help Fox, and Xanatos appears there as he has tracked Goliath. Soon, they witness werefox rampaging in the streets and try to stop her. Xanatos crushes Elisa's gun so that she can't shoot at Fox. However, when werefox climbs onto a rooftop and Goliath follows her, Xanatos flies with Elisa in his arms. Werefox mistakes Elisa for herself and attempts to attack her, but Goliath pins her on an electric sign, and Xanatos removes the Eye of Odin from her. Although werefox howls in pain due to the shock, she finally turns back human, and Elisa uses her skirt to cover Fox. Goliath wants the Eye of Odin as he doesn't trust Xanatos with the artifact. Xanatos gives it back, but worries that Goliath now knows about his weakness. As everyone departs, even Owen smiles at his employer.
He's weak. He cares more for the humans than for our clan.
Vows. The story of Xanatos' twisted love affair continues as he asks Goliath to be his best man for his upcoming wedding to Fox. Xanatos also informs that Demona is the maid of honor. On the wedding day, Xanatos' father, Petros, arrives and disapproves of his ways of wealth accumulation. Petros wishes his son was a fisherman like himself, and reveals that all of David's fortunes came from a medieval coin sent to him by an anonymous stranger. Goliath remembers attending Prince Malcolm's wedding with Princess Elena when Demona had split a talisman and gave Goliath a piece as a token of their love. Goliath attends the wedding with the artifact. Speaking of artifacts, Xanatos also wears a pin, indicating that he is a member of the Illuminati, proving that all of Matt Bluestone's theories might be true. Goliath still has lingering feelings for Demona, so he brings the piece of artifact to her after the wedding. However, all of this was just a plan by Demona and Xanatos. Demona combines the pieces of the talisman to form the Phoenix Gate, which is a time-traveling tool. The talisman takes Demona, Goliath, Petros, David and Fox to 975 AD. Demona leaves immediately with the Phoenix Gate, while David, Petros and Fox save a Norman ambassador, escorting Princess Elena from a group of bandits. The ambassador realizes David is a fellow Illuminati and takes them to meet Prince Malcolm before his wedding. The prince gives David 3 golden coins as a token of gratitude. When Xanatos instructs the ambassador to send a coin to a young David in 1975, and then another coin with details 20 years later, it proves that David Xanatos is indeed a self-made man who has wisely used the time loop. David Xanatos' name in this series is quite symbolic. For instance, Goliath, being his arch-enemy, refers to David and Goliath, while the name Xanatos is derived from Thanatos, the Greek god of death. Thanatos is also the inspiration behind Thanos. It is also revealed that the archmage had sent the bandits to steal the Phoenix Gate from Princess Elena. The archmage hopes that the Phoenix Gate, the Eye of Odin, and the Grimorum Arcanorum will give him ultimate power. He then sends his apprentice, a young Demona, to steal it from Elena. All this while, Goliath has been watching his younger self and young Demona. Although Hudson caught him, Goliath convinced Hudson of his time travel incident. As the younger Demona steals the Phoenix Gate, the older Demona appears and takes her to the future to show how the castle will be in ruins, while Goliath will stay petrified as stone even at night. Demona tries to convince her younger self to use the Phoenix Gate to kill all humans. However, older Goliath also hitched a ride with them and tried to convince younger Demona otherwise. Finally, Goliath and younger Demona fight together to defeat older Demona. Goliath asks young Demona to keep her vows of love, and together they travel back to 975 AD, with Goliath carrying the unconscious older Demona. Goliath takes David, Petro and Fox back to the future, while young Goliath and Demona prepare to attend Prince Malcolm's wedding. In 1995, Demona rebukes Goliath and tells him that his words didn't change her. Petros Xanatos also gives his son a single American penny as a wedding gift, since money is all David cares for. Goliath returns to his clan at the clock tower, but still thinks about Demona.
Now I have you.
City of Stone, Part 1. This 4-part episode starts with a hostage situation where a group of terrorists are holding 2 people hostage all day. As Goliath and the trio arrive to rescue them, 3 little girls stand behind the hostages. These girls are the Weird Sisters, and only the Gargoyles can see them. The Weird Sisters warn Goliath about other terrorists and vanish. Elsewhere, Demona glides in the air with a scroll in her hand. She recollects memories from when Goliath left to find the Vikings and Castle Wyvern was trashed by the humans. A detailed flashback shows what happened with Demona. In the past, the captain of the guard promised to protect the Gargoyles from the Vikings, so Demona doesn't alert Othello, Desdemona and others. Demona hides behind cliffs, but when she returns at night, she is devastated by the sight of the broken gargoyle statues. In guilt and fear, she hides from Goliath and leaves. But when she returns a few days later, she is shocked again to find the Manhattan Clan statues at night. She watches the princess, Magoose and Tom, the little boy who befriended the gargoyles, load up the rookery eggs and leave. Demona lives with hatred for mankind and badly injures a mere farm boy called Gillicum Gain. Back in the present, Demona meets Xanatos and Owen in a studio, from where they will broadcast Demona reading an incantation from the scroll that will take away 1 minute of every human's life who watches or hears the broadcast. However, Owen soon realizes that the incantations read by Demona are not what she promised them to be. He tries to stop her but gets frozen, and Demona ties him to a chair. More people in the city, including Elisa, watch the broadcast, as it is the only one playing on every channel. The Weird Sisters, now in their adult version, walk past the people. The Weird Sisters are named after goddesses associated with the moon, so the white-haired sister is Luna, the black-haired sister is Selene, and Phoebe has blonde hair. The Weird Sisters discuss that they have waited for 75 years and can wait for more. In 1020 AD, Demona and her new clan of Gargoyles live by robbing and stealing from people as they get hunted by a person named the Hunter. Demona looks increasingly demonic in this scene, which might be purposeful animation to show her vengeful side. The Weird Sisters appear as gargoyles to Demona and tell her about the Hunter targeting Clan Moray. Meanwhile, at Castle Moray, Lord Findlake wants his son Macbeth to marry Gruach when the Hunter appears and attempts to kill Findlake. The Scottish accents used in these scenes add a bit of finesse to these scenes. Findlake falls from the balcony and dies as an adolescent. Macbeth fights with the Hunter. Demona also arrives in the scene to get revenge on the Hunter, but as she saves Gruach and Macbeth, the Hunter disappears. It is unnatural for her to save the humans, but it somewhat explains Macbeth and Demona's history. It is then revealed that Prince Duncan had sent the Hunter to kill Findlake, while the Hunter is revealed to be Gillicum who has scars on his face from when Demona scratched him. The Weird Sisters appear again as maids in Castle Edinburgh working for Duncan. In the present, someone wears Hunter's mask and stops watching Demona's broadcast. Fox flies her husband on a helicopter toward Pack Media House and discusses Demona's broadcast. As Xanatos worries that Fox has heard the broadcast, Owen calls him about the problems with Demona's spell. But before he can finish, both Owen and Fox turn to stone as the sun sets. The Gargoyles were also surprised to see Elisa's statue in the clock tower. City of Stone, Part 2. The second part begins right where Part 1 left off, and we find Xanatos making a trepid landing with the helicopter, already thankful that Fox's statue is not chipped. Inside the clock tower, the Gargoyles discuss if Elisa's statue is from her. Keeping Broadway and Bronx in charge of looking after the statue, Goliath and the rest leave to find out what's happening. They notice that the streets are eerily quiet, and Hudson takes them to meet Geoffrey Robbins. On their way, they see all the human statues and start to realize what's going on. Robbins is still a human and shows them Demona's broadcast, which is still being played on the TV. Hudson explains to his clan that for the magic to take effect, a person should both see and hear the broadcast, so Robbins was spared. After discussing the issue with Robbins, the Gargoyles leave, and Goliath divides his team into pairs of 2 to look for Demona. As Goliath expected, Demona is not exactly hiding. She is breaking all the human statues she can find. A couple's statue Demona destroys looks like fan-favorite extra characters. However, public outrage over Demona killing them forced the creators of the show to make the characters reappear throughout the series. Once more, a flashback takes the story to 1032 AD Demona and the Hunter spar, but as dawn approaches, she leaves. On the other hand, Bodhi marries his daughter Gruach to a much older Gillicum upon the instructions of Prince Duncan. However, Gillicum rebukes Duncan, and so the prince reveals to Macbeth that Gillicum murdered Findlake. Macbeth goes to kill Gillicum to seek his revenge, but the Hunter uses Gruach as a hostage. The Weird Sisters have again informed Demona of the Hunter, so Demona secretly watches the fight. When Gillicum dons his Hunter mask, Demona gets involved. The Hunter falls to his death while Macbeth saves Demona from falling. Later, Macbeth marries Gruach, while Prince Duncan takes the Hunter's mask and proclaims there will always be a Hunter. The flashback stories are long enough to have individual episodes. In fact, this 4-part episode was intended to be a movie and may have done more justice to the storytelling. In the present, Goliath and Brooklyn look at destroyed human statues and worry about the lives lost when they encounter 3 statues of little girls representing the Weird Sisters. The statues request Goliath to remember and believe that every life is important. The statues disintegrate as soon as Brooklyn touches one of them. Back at the Pack Media studio, Demona attempts to kill Owen, but Xanatos stops her and destroys all broadcast equipment. We love how Xanatos is sometimes protective of Owen. The masked Hunter also arrives to take Demona down, but she escapes with her banshee-like shriek. When Goliath and Brooklyn finally arrive, Xanatos offers to work together, and Goliath agrees. City of Stone, Part 3. The segment starts as dawn approaches, bringing the humans back to life. Elisa wakes up in an empty clock tower, while Owen wakes up in front of Xanatos and understands everything a bit too quickly. He roughly translates Demona's spell, which states that all will be all right only when the sky is ablaze. Owen also warns Xanatos that they have only 12 hours to rectify the situation. As reporter Travis Marshall interviews people about lost memories of what happened, a woman comes to them to tell the truth. She says that she doesn't watch TV and so didn't turn into stone, but the reporter refuses to believe her. The hunter also gets frustrated while watching the news report. And another flashback takes us back to 1040 AD. Duncan is now king, and as he strolls with his steward Macbeth, their sons play around. When King Duncan slips and falls, Macbeth saves him, which assures Duncan of his loyalty. They chance upon a cave where they see Demona and her clan of gargoyles frozen as stone. Recognizing Demona, Macbeth stops Duncan from breaking the statues. On their way, Macbeth and Duncan come across the Weird Sisters, who appear to be witches as they work on a cauldron. They chant the same words as those written by Shakespeare. The witches also call both Macbeth and Duncan the King of Scotland. Once again doubtful of Macbeth's loyalty, Duncan and his men return to the cave later and destroy some of the statues. Demona and the rest wake up and flee as the sun goes down. Demona has now aged considerably, with white hair and a bony face. Bodhi informs Macbeth of the events and suggests he surrender so that Duncan pardons Groach and her son. However, Macbeth meets Demona on the way, and the Weird Sisters appear to them. Weird Sisters appear as gargoyles to Demona and as witches to Macbeth. They bind Macbeth and Demona with a spell that grants Demona everlasting youth to protect her clan while Macbeth's hair turns white. Selene also hands Macbeth an orb and tells him that Duncan ordered his father's murder. Later, Bodhi, Macbeth, Demona, and their soldiers go to war with Duncan. During an individual combat, Macbeth takes out the orb Selene gave him, and as Duncan breaks the orb, he dies. Macbeth is proclaimed King of Scotland, with Demona and her clan by his side. Duncan's son, Prince Canmore, refuses to bow and tries to kill him, but Macbeth spares his life and sends him to England to his relatives. The prince secretly picks up the hunter's mask that fell off Duncan's clothes. The version of Macbeth in this series deviates from 11th grade English literature and focuses more on 11th century history. Shakespeare introduced Macbeth as a tyrant to appease the king during his day, but in reality, the character is more complex and is dealt with differently in this series. As a matter of fact, Macbeth's voice actor, John Rhys Davies, also thought that the writers twisted Shakespeare's tale, but got so enamored by the real history that he created one of the most refined versions. As Macbeth gets sworn in as king, he gives Demona her name and also names her his advisor. If one looks properly, the Weird Sisters are present in almost every scene. They are sure to play a long game, and spotting them can be a fun game if you are up for it. Elisa also gets a clue about Pack Media House being a source of the broadcast and goes to Castle Wyvern to question Xanatos. She gets into a scuffle with Owen, but both turn to stone as the sun sets. The Manhattan clan arrives as Xanatos seeks their help, creating a false fire in the sky. Xanatos, his Steel clan, and the Manhattan clan leave the castle unattended as Demona comes around from behind an old tapestry. The episode ends in one final cliffhanger as Demona attempts to break Elisa and Owen's statue.
Reason, take them down. We'll sort it out after.
City of Stone, Part 4. The final segment starts with Bronx stopping Demona from breaking Elisa and Owen's statue. Demona pets Bronx and instead switches on the gas pack timer on the gargoyles. Before Demona can escape, the hunter appears, and we are taken back to the final flashback of this segment in 1057 AD. The flashback starts in the middle of a war as the hunter charges an army of English soldiers towards Castle Moray. Demona and her clan stop them, but Body suggests that Macbeth should get rid of the Gargoyles as the English did, and the English will no longer fight Macbeth. Macbeth's son Luach gets furious at the suggestion, but Macbeth tells him that a king should consider all conditions. Unfortunately, Demona overhears the conversation and misjudges Macbeth. The Gargoyles desert the castle as it falls under the English army. Macbeth and Gruach escape from a secret passage as the castle is set on fire. They are further stopped by the hunter, who reveals himself to be adult Prince Canmore. Demona arrives at the scene, and Macbeth is furious that she has betrayed him. As the former allies turn into bitter foes, Canmore stabs Macbeth, which also seemingly kills Demona since she is linked to Macbeth. Prince Luach arrives at the scene and finds his mother crying over Macbeth's body. Bodhi picks up Macbeth's crown and anoints his grandson the king, who leaves to avenge his father. The Weird Sisters appear again and ask Demona to wake up. Gruach tells Demona that Prince Canmore killed her clan and not Macbeth. As Demona leaves, Macbeth also wakes up. The Weird Sisters claim that since Demona and Macbeth are linked, one cannot die while the other lives, so they must destroy each other. This kind of sounds the same way Harry had been linked to Voldemort. However, there is no Horcrux in this world. Gruach tells Macbeth to leave as no one will accept him as the king. In the present, Demona declares that she knows that the latest hunter is Macbeth. Meanwhile, as Xanatos complains about Bronx chewing on the old tapestry, Goliath realizes something and returns to the castle. They arrive just in time to save Elisa and Owen's statues from falling. When Demona gets knocked down, and Macbeth attempts to kill her, Goliath makes him realize that revenge will not get him anywhere. It is said that Luach died in his battle with Canmore, and following his death, Gruach committed suicide. A nonchalant Xanatos reminds everyone that he needs the access code to stop the premature explosion of the gas packs and save his city. However, only Demona knows the passcode. The Weird Sister speaks to her and reminds her of all the incidents that developed Demona's hatred for humans and desire for revenge. It's no surprise that Demona is the most responsible for all the incidents. Right from the hatred for the human race to skin and hair color, Demona is strikingly similar to Mystique, an X-Men villain from the Marvel comics. Demona confesses the passcode is alone, which reflects her pathetic condition. Xanatos stops the timer, while Demona wakes up from the trance set by the Weird Sisters. When Demona again blames the humans, the Weird Sisters put Demona to sleep, just like they did to Macbeth. Taking responsibility, the Weird Sisters leave with the duo, and later, the Steel Clan explodes to set the sky on fire. Because, of course, Xanatos can afford it, and he seems a bit like Iron Man, but more like a cunning version. As the humans return to life, the Gargoyles hug Elisa, and Xanatos only shakes Owen's hand. Xanatos and Goliath bids goodbye after acknowledging that they are occasionally useful to each other. High noon. The story begins with Coldstone Othello meeting with Desdemona on a castle top. But don't worry, it's not another flashback. The event takes place inside the mind of cyborg Coldstone, where the three gargoyle souls live in a virtual reality kind of space. Iago has lost his power, but he is often interrupting the couple. In the real world, Lexington is working on retrieving the virus and bringing Coldstone online. Elisa delivers him some books that can help him, but she is too exhausted and heads home to sleep. Soon it's dawn, and on her way out of the precinct, she notices a rookie female cop taking in a big, muscular man inside in handcuffs. Elisa feels something is wrong and follows them to find that the two have sneaked into the clock tower. The man is revealed to be Macbeth in disguise, while the woman is Demona in her human version. This is an odd alliance, and they knock out Elisa and escape with Coldstone's statue. As the sun sets, Demona goes through a painful process of reverting to a gargoyle, putting Macbeth in pain. And when Elisa commented that the next person Xanatos hires might approach high noon with a sledgehammer. However, Xanatos is not the person to worry about in this one. Macbeth and Demona insert a disc inside Coldstone, which makes a vortex reappear in the virtual world inside Coldstone. Iago goes through the vortex and comes online, recognizing Demona as his sister. On the other hand, Elisa has told the Manhattan clan about Macbeth escaping with Coldstone. The clan decides to storm Macbeth's mansion, but worries as everything seems suspiciously easier. Lex discovers an empty control room and uses it to find Coldstone. Bronx and Brooklyn encounter Demona and subdue her, while Hudson and Broadway do the same to Macbeth. The Gargoyles bring together an unconscious Macbeth and Demona, wondering how they are working together. They release Coldstone from the chains, and soon it is revealed that all three of them are pretending. They shock the Manhattan clan, and Demona returns to the clock tower to visit Elisa. Demona painfully changes to a human before Elisa, and challenges her to meet at high noon for combat. Since Elisa is already exhausted, this may prove difficult. Moreover, Demona's gambit ensures that if Elisa takes up the challenge, it may mean ultimate doom for her, while not going will mean she abandons Goliath and his clan. It is also a classic reference to a 1952 movie, High Noon, which features the theme of facing frightening possibilities. Despite being too tired, Elisa heads towards Central Park to confront the villains, but she gets some encouragement from a cop called Morgan. At the park, no one notices Coldstone and the rest. Being a cyborg made of magic and technology doesn't turn Coldstone into stone during the day. When Elisa arrives, Demona attempts to shoot at her, but Macbeth asks if Demona is afraid of hand-to-hand combat. A catfight between the two women is one of the short-lived highlights of the series, and even Coldstone Iago finds it diverting. However, inside of him, the Weird Sisters take Desdemona's form to urge Othello to take charge. As Desdemona holds Iago, Coldstone Othello comes online and stops Demona and Macbeth. Elisa seeks Coldstone's help to release the Manhattan clan statues from their chains. Coldstone then takes his leave, saying that he first needs to stop the raging war inside of him before he can meet his brothers again. The Eye of Odin, Grimorum and Phoenix Gate, which Goliath guarded in the clock tower, can now be seen in Macbeth's mansion. It appears that kidnapping Coldstone was a smokescreen, so that the Manhattan clan wouldn't notice the missing artifacts. Demona and Macbeth wonder how they knew where to find the artifacts, why they stole them, and why they are working together. As the spell put on them comes to be undone, they are paused by the Weird Sisters, who take the artifacts that will help them in a forthcoming war. So now you probably understand that the Weird Sisters orchestrated this whole event. But what war are they talking about? Outfoxed. In the early episodes of Season 1, Goliath and Demona sabotaged an air fortress of cyberbiotics to steal data for Xanatos. Of course, Goliath had no idea that Xanatos and Demona were lying to him. Anyway, Cyberbiotics CEO Halcyon Reynard has recently created another airship called Air Fortress 2. And a news report shows the interview of Reynard's assistant Preston Vogel talking about its maiden flight. Vogel, who uncannily looks like Owen, shares that the airship will be run by a complete robotic crew called Cybots, except for human scientists. Fox watches the news and plans something sinister with her husband, while Goliath and Elisa watch the airship take off. I must say it's pretty stupid of Goliath to immediately follow the aircraft, which gets noticed by Vogel and Reynard. They send Cybots to attack Goliath and then capture him. Goliath is confined in a cage when an old and decrepit Reynard visits him. Goliath refuses to take responsibility for his past actions, which irks Reynard. After Reynard leaves the spot, Vogel gets into a video call chat with Fox, indicating that Vogel has taken a bribe to sabotage the airship. Meanwhile, Reynard again speaks with Goliath and shares how he lost Savarius, Owen, and more to Xanatos. With their conversation continuing, Goliath finally realizes his faults and takes responsibility, which appeases Reynard. This episode is one such instance where the Gargoyles gain another such ally. Back at the Eyrie building, Xanatos and Fox practice martial arts, and she seems distracted. As Fox awaits to obtain authority over cyberbiotics, she gets a phone call from a doctor. Back at Air Fortress 2, Vogel inserts a microchip of virus in one of the Cybots, which infects the other Cybots. Vogel calls Reynard to inform him about Cybots taking over the airship, which is now heading towards the tower in the bay, aiming for a collision. Vogel blames everything on Goliath and suggests initiating self-destruction to prevent the collision and save themselves. A distraught Reynard refuses to destroy the airship, which will bring his company down to ruins. Goliath proclaims his innocence and offers his help. Reynard releases Goliath, who destroys all the guard robots, and together the duo makes their way through the airship. Vogel watches the developments from his escape pod and still tries to go on with the plan while ensuring that Reynard is safe. Reynard instructs Goliath to destroy the core, which will deactivate the robots, and Goliath manages to do so after fighting a few cybots. When Reynard intends to go down with the ship, Vogel feels guilty and has a change of heart. He rushes to help Reynard in deflecting the airship from the collision course. As Goliath confronts Vogel, he apologizes and comes clean. Goliath departs Air Fortress 2, having formed a friendship with Halcyon Reynard. But Fox breaks into the airship immediately afterward and addresses Reynard as Dad. It is finally revealed that Fox's real name is Janine Reynard. Like several other characters, Fox's last name, Reynard, refers to Reynard the Fox. Halcyon asks his daughter why she resorted to such sabotage when he would have given her everything if she asked nicely. But Fox claims that wouldn't have been fun and leaves the airship after telling her father about being a grandfather. It's a remarkable fact that Xanatos' voice actor, Jonathan Frakes' wife, was also pregnant with their first child at the same time. As the sun rises again, the episode ends with possibilities of new beginnings.
I've been looking for you.
The price. Although this episode was aired in October, it was out of order. The story starts on an uneventful night as the Manhattan Clan finishes patrolling New York City. However, they get attacked by Macbeth on their way back to the clock tower. Macbeth rides on an airborne scooter, and during the fight, Macbeth also throws some kind of powder at Hudson. Goliath defeats Macbeth, and his scooter explodes as he falls on the road, making the Gargoyles think he has died. As it's too late to reach the clock tower, the Gargoyles take their defensive posture and turn to stone on a random rooftop. This scene, showing the Gargoyles making a circle, may remind you of the Avengers teaming up. Is this where they got the inspiration from? However, the Gargoyles are shocked when they wake up and find Hudson is still in stone form. Goliath asks Brooklyn and Broadway to guard Hudson's statue as he takes Lex to investigate Macbeth's mansion. Greg Wiseman has once stated that Broadway is Hudson's biological son, and both remain unaware of that. Interestingly, both of them face near-death situations in this plot. Goliath and Lex get attacked by Macbeth's automated security system, but fail to find anything, which is all right as Hudson is alive and quite furious. Hudson is confined to a cage somewhere, while Xanatos and Owen are his real capturers. Many viewers initially thought the cage represented Hudson's mind, but the illusion didn't last long. Xanatos shares his plan to use Hudson's stone skin and the Cauldron of Life to create an immortality potion. It is also the first time Xanatos' interest in gaining immortality is hinted at. Xanatos explains that the skin must boil for 1 day and night, granting the person dunking in it a life as long as mountain stone. Xanatos collects a piece of stone from a tray beneath Hudson's cage. It's awful how Hudson is treated as an animal. Xanatos also explains that he has replaced Hudson with a fake statue to dupe the Manhattan Clan. You might consider this most illogical for such a well-developed series. Xanatos orders Owen to distract the Gargoyles, and right on cue, Macbeth and his flying board reappear. As Macbeth attacks Brooklyn and Broadway, he repeats the same dialogue, and it's easy to deduce that something fishy is happening here. Goliath and Lex return from Macbeth's mansion and meet Elisa near a Persian carpet warehouse. As the dawn approaches, the Gargoyles turns to stone with Broadway still mid-air. As Broadway's statue starts falling, Elisa shoots at a nearby wooden container hanging from a crane. The container explodes, with carpets falling that provide a cushion and save Broadway from getting smashed. As the night comes, the Gargoyles rejoice at seeing Broadway alive, but Macbeth reappears and starts shooting at the exhausted Gargoyles with taser guns. When a stray shot destroys Hudson's statue, Goliath gets overpowered by grief and rage. He jumps onto the flying board and punches Macbeth, only to realize that all along, the Macbeth-S attacking them are robots. At Xanatos' place, a steel gargoyle retrieves Hudson and tries to throw him into the cauldron, but Hudson saves himself by using a piece of his stone skin as a weapon. Hudson then leaves, warning Xanatos of immortality. He arrives at the rooftop, where the Gargoyles and Elisa are saying their obituaries for Hudson. They are overjoyed to see Hudson alive, and Hudson takes a piece of the broken statue as a souvenir.
My enemies
Revelations. At Hotel Cabal, Goliath is thrown into a room with a death trap. Mace Malone, the old gangster, watches from a control room and has fun tormenting Goliath. Malone speaks to Matt Bluestone, who is standing behind him. And as Matt remembers how he got into the situation, we dive into the actual events of the episode. It begins with Matt meeting his ex-colleague Martin Hacker from the FBI, who hands him a clue about Malone's stepson. Hacker warns Matt to abandon his useless pursuit of the Illuminati, but Matt doesn't pay any heed. Matt goes back to the precinct and searches for Elisa. He waits for her outside the ladies' washroom, but only Captain Chavez comes out. Matt then sees her coming out of the attic, but realizes she is lying when Elisa speaks about finding a mop to clean the washroom. Matt later finds Malone's stepson, Jack Dane, in a gym and asks him about his mother, Flora Dreedle. Back at the precinct, Elisa finds Matt moving about in the attic. He questions Elisa about all the furnishings, but Elisa lies and takes him out of the room again. Since Matt has proven to be a good partner, it's rather unfair of Elisa not to trust him. Matt confronts Mace Malone in front of Flora's crypt the next day and claims that Mace Malone is a member of the Illuminati. Rightly enough, Malone sports a tattoo of the society, but the fact that he is over 100 years old also indicates that he lives off some specialized medications. Much to his surprise, Malone offers Matt a membership position, provided he passes a loyalty test. Malone confesses that he knows all about Xanatos, who is a lower echelon member. Malone shares that the Illuminati had their eye on Matt for his determination and grit. This version states that Illuminati members are chosen for their skills and resources. So, Xanatos' membership could be due to his immense wealth. When Malone discloses information about Elisa and the Gargoyles to Matt, the cop gets angry at Elisa. While riding together, Matt forces Elisa to let him drive and grills her about the Gargoyles. The angsty stuff from Matt changes the pace of the story somewhat. As they reach the precinct, it's already morning, and Elisa asks him to wait until sundown. Matt takes the time to meet Malone, who gives him a key and asks Matt to bring a gargoyle to Hotel Cabal. Elisa introduces Matt to the Manhattan clan during sunset, and Matt takes Goliath aside to talk to him privately. Matt takes Goliath to the hotel on the pretext of investigating Malone's office. Once inside, two different shoots take Goliath to a death trap room, and Matt finds his way to the control room while we arrive at where the episode began. Matt confesses that he lost the key when falling down the chute, and Malone explains that the key can be used to deactivate the hotel's heat-sensitive mechanism. Suddenly, Matt notices that Goliath is absent from the screen. Malone gets scared that Goliath escaping from the hotel will mean losing his Illuminati membership and 75-year pension. Malone arrives at the elevator with a gun and aims to shoot at Goliath when Matt shoves Mace Malone down the elevator shaft. Goliath rescues Matt, and they leave the hotel together. However, Mace Malone gets trapped in the hotel after losing his own key. It appears Matt had planned the entire thing with Goliath earlier. Matt watches the Gargoyles turn back to stone in daylight, and Elisa reveals that she only hid the truth as she felt special being the Gargoyles' only ally. There are more surprises yet as Martin Hacker meets Matt again, revealing himself as an Illuminati member. He gives Matt a pin to acknowledge him as the latest member. It is explained that the Illuminati always has 666 members, and Mace Malone, losing his membership due to his failure, opened a spot for Matt. Although Matt joins the secret group, his involvement with the Illuminati is no longer featured in the plot.
Bluestone!
Double jeopardy. It's been a year since Goliath and his gargoyle brothers have woken up in Manhattan. A flashback to 1 year ago shows the moment when a rogue Steel Clan robot wakes up and attacks Goliath and Elisa in Castle Wyvern. Goliath destroys the robot but gets scratched, and Owen comes up and puts ointment on Goliath. A year later, Elisa drives through a mountain road while it rains. Lex and Broadway follow her to help investigate an anonymous tip about vandalism on an oil rig on the river. However, something disrupts their flight and almost causes Elisa's car to topple, but she swerves. The three of them are shocked to see that Goliath is the attacker, more so when Goliath lets out a horrible maniacal laugh. Elsewhere, Dr. Savarius orders some men to retrieve something from Castle Wyvern. Elisa, Lex, and Broadway return to the clock tower and inform Hudson about the issue. As dawn approaches, Brooklyn and Goliath do not return in time. Surprisingly, a Goliath statue guards Castle Wyvern, but as Xanatos is about to leave for work, he sees a helicopter lift the statue and take it away. Xanatos stops Owen from shooting the helicopter and wonders which of his rivals might be behind the act. The show's treatment of its main villain, Xanatos, is rather unique. For sure, he is a Machiavellian villain, but he does not shy away from saving his city, having a family life, or helping our heroes once in a while. Although his end game remains hidden, it spruces up the plot. That night, Goliath and Brooklyn return, but Goliath denies being the attacker, and Brooklyn confirms his alibi. The Goliath statue gets delivered to Savarius, who is ready with a tranquilizer gun, and soon the container is broken open by Goliath's evil twin, Tylog. The name is created by spelling Goliath's name backward, and although it turns into Tylog, it is obviously a little bit difficult to pronounce. Xanatos receives a ransom call for $20 million for the stolen statue, while Broadway and Lex's investigation of the Genu Tech office reveals that Owen had collected Goliath's living DNA sample a year back under the pretext of putting an ointment. This was pretty obvious, but then the log shows how Tylog was created by a short cloning process and has white hair instead of black, unlike Goliath. When Xanatos reaches the oil rig with the ransom money, Elisa and Goliath keep a watch from the riverbank. They observe Xanatos and young Savarius confront each other. It gets confusing when Savarius claims he received an email order from Xanatos Enterprise to steal Tylog. Xanatos quickly understands Tylog's schemes, while Goliath and Elisa secretly enter the abandoned oil rig. Tylog knocks down Goliath and proves to be an even stronger gargoyle. Since Xanatos has infused Tylog with his intelligence and mindset, the clone is part Goliath and part Xanatos, making him the most formidable character in the series. Keith David voices both Goliath and Tylog. Tylog restrains Elisa, Goliath, Xanatos, and Savarius with chains. He then picks up the briefcase of money and discloses his plans to get revenge on all his fathers. Tylog confesses that Elisa was not a target and was just there at the wrong time. He also plans to use several gallons of oil to set the place on fire. After Tylog locks them up and leaves, Elisa uses her police skills to slip out of her handcuff. Savarius explains that the disc thrown by Tylog on Xanatos to electrocute him can help them break the chains. As the four break out, Goliath asks Elisa to leave with Xanatos and Savarius while he remains to stop Tylog. However, the scuffle between the two accidentally sets the rig on fire, and the blow-up causes Goliath to topple over. Goliath comes up on Xanatos' boat, while Lex and Broadway also arrive. The Gargoyles believe that Tylog is dead, and the issue is over. However, a discussion with Owen makes Xanatos realize that Tylog must have made another plan to escape. Now that Tylog is out in the world with $20 million, Xanatos regrets unleashing a monster. Upgrade. This episode brings back the pack, who have been long absent from action. Fox is not with the pack, as it robs a bank. Having upgraded to Mrs. Xanatos has made Fox a more conniving player. The Manhattan clan charges after the pack, but a sudden attack by a shocking device makes Goliath fall, and the Gargoyles surround him instead of stopping the pack from escaping. Once back at the clock tower, Hudson suggests that Goliath must choose a second-in-command who will lead the clan if something terrible happens to Goliath. Aboard the pack's aircraft, Hyena tends to Jackal's wound as Wolf and Dingo continue their bickering. An unexpected guest arrives, who is none other than the severed head of a coyote robot. Coyote Head shows them several options by which they can upgrade their skill set and become more formidable enemies for the Gargoyles. As a month passes, Lex, Broadway and Brooklyn compete against each other to be the second in command, while Bronx is already tired of their affairs. After they leave, Elisa comes with news of the pack striking again. Once Goliath, Hudson, Bronx and Elisa arrive at the spot, they are tricked by the Coyote Head and attacked by the pack. Jackal and Hyena have chosen to turn into cyborgs, and their cybernetic body parts greatly favor them. Their choice reflects their sociopathic and non-empathetic character. Wolf has turned into a mutate, and his choice of genetic engineering upgrades reflects his brutish, animalistic, aggressive behavior. Dingo is the only one who opts for a more normal and wiser choice, and is wearing a power suit. He is appalled by the other members' choice to distort their human self. As Jackal knocks down Bronx and Wolf defeats Hudson, they argue about who will be the next pack leader. Meanwhile, an upgraded Coyote reappears and defeats Goliath to assume leadership of the pack. It's quite a shame that this group of motley villains does not have toy lines or action figures. Speaking of games, it is revealed that Xanatos and Fox are playing with the pack and clan as chess pawns. So when the Gargoyles trio return from their usual crime-fighting business, they get a cryptic message from Fox through a television advertisement. The message directs them to a subway path. Meanwhile, the pack works under Coyote's instructions and keeps the captured Gargoyles and Elisa as hostages in stasis. Brooklyn leads the other two to the subway and confronts the pack. The ensuing fight further breaks the stasis chambers, making the fight level up and well-balanced. However, Dingo doesn't enjoy the fight and gets tired of the freak show, which makes him an easy target for Elisa to defeat. Brooklyn and Hudson defeat Jackal and Wolf, while Broadway and Lex defeat Hyena. Lastly, Goliath rips the Coyote's head open from its robotic body and destroys it for good. He keeps the pack hanging in the place for the police to find. Later, Goliath appoints Brooklyn as the second in command, while confessing that he had put off the decision, fearing it would create a rift in the trio. However, everyone wholeheartedly congratulates Brooklyn. With this, Fox wins the chess game against Xanatos, who is pleased to be partnered with an equal.
Sorry, sugar. I've already got a partner.
Protection. Although the story of the Gargoyles is fascinating and enchanting, with different elements of science fiction, history and sorcery, it is a tad bit monotonous when it comes to villains. Goliath's so-called archenemy, Xanatos, is always involved in some convoluted schemes, while the series recycles the antagonists. For example, this episode brings back Tony Dracon into the scene, as he runs a protection racket. Tony orders his right-hand man, Glasses, to blow up a store whose owner, Art and Lois, had refused to pay the extortion money. At the same time, rumors spread about Elisa extorting money from store owners. Pal Joey, one of Draken's men, overhears Captain Chavez suspending Elisa until she is proven innocent. Broadway and Goliath also note certain changes in Elisa, as she has not paid them a visit for days. They watch the news about Tony Draken's protection racket, and Broadway explains to Goliath that it's how criminals extort money from shopkeepers by promising not to destroy their stores. One night, Elisa dresses up more seductively, and her exposed midriff look with the black jacket is often considered a fan service. She threatens the owner of the pool game shop when Draken's men pick her up. However, Broadway and Goliath stop their vehicle to save Elisa. To their surprise and Glass's horror, Elisa chides the Gargoyles for interfering. Her harsh words and odd attitude make Goliath believe she might be magically mind-controlled. Once at Tony Draken's place, Glasses informs how Elisa controls the Gargoyles. Later, Elisa flirts with Draken as he falls for her new avatar. In the meantime, Matt goes undercover as an assistant at his friend Mr. Jaffe's grocery shop. Glasses threatens them to extort money, but Matt agrees to pay only once, as he mentions that Maza has also been asking for a cut. Captain Chavez also pairs up with Morgan to act as a dry cleaning shop owner and refuses to pay up. The undercover plot definitely hooks us, but the scenes are very few to savour. As Elisa and Tony savour some jalapenos, Goliath and Broadway appear at Tony Draken's house and offer to join hands with him in exchange for money. Tony marvels at the muscular form and strength of the Gargoyles. He plans to rule the city with Elisa and the Gargoyles by his side. Just then, Glasses and pal Joey arrive with the news of the problems they have run into. Tony foolishly orders Broadway and Goliath to assist pal Joey in blowing up the dry cleaners while he heads to the grocery store along with Elisa to prove they are working together. However, Goliath and Broadway have their own plans. As Goliath leaves to check on Elisa, Broadway arrives at the dry cleaners just after pal Joey has left a ticking bomb inside. Broadway stops the rogues and ties them up, but has to leave soon with the time bomb. As Broadway flies over the river, it explodes, and Broadway gets saved by an inch. exclaiming jalapeno. Things turn intense at the grocery store, where Matt tricks Tony Draken into confessing the crime in front of security cameras. Soon, Elisa reveals that she has been working undercover and has planned it with her partner, Matt. Draken regrets being unable to work with her and calls in his goons, but Goliath is there to save the day. He picks up Draken and glides away. Goliath drops Draken mid-air as a punishment, but catches him before falling as Draken faints. As all the cops arrive, Captain Chavez congratulates Elisa and returns her badge, indicating she was also included in the plan. When Elisa asks why Goliath and Broadway pretended to join Tony Draken, Broadway claims that he believed she was working undercover. At last, Broadway encourages Goliath to try the super hot jalapenos, to which Goliath exclaims, "Jalapeno." The cage. It's been a long time since we came across Elisa's brother Derek, aka Talon. One night when Elisa and her family are having dinner, somebody snoops in from the window. At first, Elisa thinks it's Goliath or somebody else from the Manhattan clan. But when Goliath confirms that the mutates made by Savarius are back in town, Elisa infers it must be her brother. They go up to Castle Wyvern, but the mutates attack them. Xanatos also appears to stop the fight, and although Elisa and Goliath try to explain, Derek won't listen. Derek recounts the past event and still holds Goliath responsible for his condition. As an ex-policeman, Derek seems excessively naive about misunderstanding the Gargoyles and his sister. Elisa informs them that Savarius is alive, but Derek refuses to believe, while Xanatos doesn't disclose the truth. He later orders Owen to ask Savarius to be away for a while. Sometime later, somebody with wings abducts Savarius and takes him to a dungeon, forcing him to make a cure. Elisa also arrives at Genu Tech, just after Savarius goes missing, and she sees a silhouette of Goliath above the place. All this while, Maggie has been the most understanding and wondered if Elisa and Goliath were telling the truth. Talon returns with confirmed news of Savarius being alive, but still thinks he is working with Goliath. Maggie remembers how the Gargoyles took her to their home and wanted to help, but her fellow mutates force her to take them to the clock tower, where they attack Hudson and Bronx, binding them in chains. The trio returns from a concert soon after and fights the mutates, ultimately tying them up. Hudson and Bronx also get out of their chains and tell Brooklyn that it was Maggie who led the mutates to the clock tower. Maggie still believes in Talon and Xanatos, so Brooklyn allows the mutates to return, as he believes that Xanatos' real face will be revealed sooner or later. Brooklyn appears much more relaxed and calmer, and is the exemplary second-in-command character. This is quite a contrast to the character he was initially designed as, since the creators and animators consciously made his body red to depict his hot-headed nature. The other terrifyingly calm and poised character is Xanatos, who learns of Savarius' kidnapping and thinks Talon is responsible. He further lies to Talon that Goliath wanted more creatures like him, and so ordered Savarius to create the mutates. Later, it is revealed that Goliath is the one who kidnapped Savarius, and Xanatos informs him that Goliath must have taken him to the old cyberbiotics lab underground. Avalon. Part 1. Do you remember the little boy the Gargoyles befriended on the first episode of the Gargoyles? He is back as a middle-aged fellow who has come to Manhattan dressed in steel armor and a sword. Some crooks try to mug him, but the guy is skilled enough to hold his own. When Officer Morgan asks him to put down the sword, the man obliges his fellow guardian. Elisa learns from Morgan that the man has been looking for the Gargoyles, particularly someone named Goliath. On the other hand, all Gargoyles, except Goliath, have gone patrolling and have not taken Bronx. So when Elisa informs Goliath of meeting the man, Bronx is only too eager to go out. Goliath, Bronx and Elisa meet the man in a park, where he reveals himself as Tom, the little boy from 1,000 years ago. Tom doesn't explain further and asks for Goliath's help regarding the rookery eggs. Tom takes Goliath, Bronx and Elisa on a boat ride and explains that he is from Avalon. As Tom recounts what happened, a flashback starts in 994 AD. Princess Catherine, Magoose, Tom and his mother Mary prepare to leave for Catherine's uncle King Kenneth's kingdom with the 36 rookery eggs. Princess Catherine anoints little Tom as guardian of the eggs. King Kenneth welcomes his niece, but his love interest, Lady Fenella, is restless. Constantine crowns himself king and kills anyone who doesn't swear fealty to him. When Maul Chalvin II prepares to flee, Princess Catherine refuses to go with him as she needs to guard the eggs. Magus, Mary and Tom also stay with the princess. As Constantine is officiated, he announces his marriage to Princess Catherine, surprising everybody, while Lady Fenella runs away in pain and torment. However, when Princess Catherine plans to transport the egg safely, they ask Fenella for help. Magus uses his magic to transform the eggs into kitchen utensils and vice versa, so that Tom can take them to the port. Magus also gives Fenella a sleeping potion to slip into Constantine's drink. Take a boat, and with an incantation they travel to Oberon's mystical island, Avalon. The Weird Sisters stop them from entering Avalon, and Magus uses the Grimorum to transform the Weird Sisters into owls. As magical items cannot be taken inside the island, Fenella agrees to take the Grimorum to safety, and Mary accompanies her, leaving Tom to guard the eggs with the princess and Magus. As middle-aged Tom finishes the story, Elisa asks the most critical question: how is he still alive? Tom explains that 1 hour in Avalon is 1 day everywhere else, so being alive for 1,000 years may make him approximately 42 years of age. The boat finally arrives at Avalon, and Tom informs that the archmage has seized the island. Goliath gets more surprised to see that the rookery eggs have hatched. As this segment continues, there is a series of adventures in this enchanted land to look out for. Avalon, Part 2. The second part begins with 3 Avalon gargoyles meeting the guests who have just arrived with Tom. One of the gargoyles is a dog called Boudica, who greets Bronx, while another is a young female called Angela and a young male called Gabriel. Before they can speak further, 2 sand apparitions of the archmage emerge from the beach and attack them. Elisa shoots at them fruitlessly, but Goliath's strength proves formidable for the archmage. The archmage still mocks that all of them will be dead at dawn. As an example, he turns to stone and crumbles. On their way, Elisa can't help but notice that Angela looks like Demona, but has Goliath's skin color. Although it's apparent Angela is Goliath and Demona's daughter, Goliath explains that eggs and children belong to the whole clan. Similarly, with the looks of Gabriel's appearance and blonde hair, he sure is Coldstone and his mate's son. Once at the castle, the guests meet the old Princess Catherine and old Magus, who is treating injured gargoyles. They explain how the Weird Sisters, Demona and Macbeth, have allied with the Archmage and are using the stolen artifacts. Elisa and Goliath realize that the Weird Sisters are controlling Demona and Macbeth and have used them to get the items from the clock tower. To add to their confusion, Tom tells them that there are 2 archmages who wear the Eye of Odin. Somewhere else on the island, one of the archmages uses the Phoenix Gate to travel to Scotland in 984 AD, when the archmage was fighting Hudson. The older and wiser archmage rescues the younger one from falling and takes him to 995 AD, to the moment when the Weird Sisters stopped Magus and his group from arriving at the threshold of Avalon. The archmage helps the Weird Sisters revert to humans from owls, and as they seek revenge, the archmage asks them to meet 25 years later. While explaining the great potential and power they will receive, the Archmage takes his younger self to 1020 AD and informs the Weird Sisters to make Demona their ally. Next, he introduces young Macbeth to the Weird Sisters. They meet the Weird Sister, accompanied by Demona and Macbeth. The Archmage asks the Weird Sisters to give the Eye of Odin to his younger self, and wearing it as a crown makes the 2 Archmages look similar. Since no human magic can be taken inside, the Archmage consumes the Grimorum to amass all knowledge. Archmage also acquires the Phoenix Gate, but the Weird Sisters warn him about the Sleeping King at Hollow Hill. 6 hours before the present moment, the Archmage had attacked the gargoyles and humans of Avalon, but left them, promising to come back once it was dawn. The Archmage informs the Weird Sisters that this opportunity will enable Tom to bring Goliath, and that the Archmage can finally obtain revenge. He sends his younger self to rescue himself from 984 AD, completing the time loop. On the other hand, Goliath leaves with Gabriel and Angela to fight the villains and asks Elisa to form a contingency plan. The Archmage observes the developments through magic and waits to return to the gargoyles. Avalon, Part 3. This is the final segment of this arc, and it begins with Demona and Macbeth trying to stop Goliath and the hatchlings. Goliath reminds Demona that the hatchlings are their children, which makes the mind control on her disappear. Goliath uses the same trick to remind Macbeth of his honor, but the archmage proves too powerful and has the duo back in control. Thankfully, Bronx and Boudica are there to save the gargoyles. Back in the castle, Magus insists on taking Elisa to the sleeping king. On their way, Magus tells Elisa he is used to working alone. Magus recounts how he, the princess and Tom lived a happy, carefree life like a family at Avalon. Magus is obviously in love with Princess Catherine, which is always hinted at, especially since he has never abandoned her. But when Tom grew up, Catherine started to rely more on Tom, and the two became like husband and wife. Guilt-ridden for what he did to Goliath's clan, Magus could never fight for his love and felt pretty useless without the Grimorum. As they reach Hollow Hill, two enchanted armors try to stop them from reaching the sleeping king. Magus channels the magic of the place to defeat them, but without a conduit like the Grimorum, it drains Magus. With so many different stories to tell, the series has also given rise to licensed games. Elisa wakes up the king, who is revealed to be none other than Arthur Pendragon. Elisa and Magus bring Arthur to Oberon's palace to meet Catherine and the gargoyles. A battle ensues on three fronts, with Goliath confronting the archmage. Magus volunteers to fight the Weird Sisters, while Arthur and Macbeth spar outside the palace. Inside the castle, Demona launches an attack on Catherine, but Tom comes to save her, and Elisa attracts Demona's attention to herself. It also proves immensely strenuous for Magus to fight the Weird Sisters. Catherine uses Demona's laser gun to drop a wall on her, while Arthur shatters Macbeth's sword and knocks him out. Elsewhere, Goliath wrestles with the archmage for a long time, until Goliath pries the Eye of Odin from the archmage's head. Without the eye, the archmage fails to contain the Grimorum's power and disintegrates. As the war is over, everyone surrounds Magus as he takes his last breath. Later, King Arthur leaves Avalon to explore the New World alone, and Goliath asks him to meet if he is in Manhattan. Goliath also orders the Weird Sisters to release their control over Demona and Macbeth. Once it's done, Goliath pushes their boat toward the sea. As Goliath, Bronx and Elisa prepare to leave and bid goodbye to the princess and Tom, Angela opts to go with them. Gabriel refuses to join and bids goodbye to his sister Angela, saying they are already rebuilding the palace with other Avalon gargoyles. In the end, Elisa exclaims that she can't wait to be back, but Tom reminds them that the boat does not take them where they want, but where they are needed. And so begins the Avalon World Tour. Shadows of the Past. The first adventure in Avalon takes Goliath and his crew to the same cliff from where Hakon and the captain of the guard fell to their death in Awakening. A storm and turbulent sea take their boat into the island. But as soon as they embark on the place, Goliath starts getting hallucinations. Although Castle Wyvern is no longer there, Goliath is able to see it for a moment and hears an echoing female voice. Goliath takes the crew inside a cave filled with an eerie green light. Elisa and Angela notice hieroglyphics depicting the archmage and the gargoyles on the wall, but Goliath sees something else and gets horrified. Although Goliath shows Angela the rookery and explains her history, he gets scared when he gets flashbacks of when he rescued Princess Catherine. This worsens when Goliath sees Hakon instead of Elisa and the captain of the guard instead of Angela. Goliath pins both of the ladies on the wall, but Bronx senses something foul and pushes Goliath away from the women. Goliath requests the women not to follow him, as he could be a danger to them, and runs back to the cave. They lure Goliath through the gate with the hieroglyphics, and the rest of his crew follows him. As they move through a narrow stairway beside a narrow fissure, Goliath again has a vision of the ghosts coming after him. He slips and falls, but Bronx, Elisa and Angela quickly catch him. Goliath lets go when he again sees the ghosts instead of Elisa and Angela. As Goliath falls down the fissure, Elisa climbs and follows him, with Angela and Bronx following her. Goliath finally reaches a clearing with a megalith construct, as the ghost decides to weaken him further. The megaliths light up, and the stone around it takes the form of the fallen members of the Wyvern clan. They blame Goliath for betraying, and as they start hurting Goliath, he gets too overwhelmed to protect himself. However, a stone form of Demona breaks the spell, as Goliath remembers she was never there during the massacre. And nevertheless, the ghosts now appear in their real form and seek vengeance, even though Goliath was not the one responsible for their death. They declare that being stuck in the place for 1,000 years has made them come to terms with each other. The megaliths glow brighter as the ghosts start drawing Goliath's life force. With the ghosts taking solid forms, Goliath starts to fade. Goliath asks the captain what life is without honor, which causes a major change of heart, and the captain realizes that he is repeating the same mistake. The captain pushes Hakon into the pulsating energy inside the megalith construct, and as they wrestle, the structures fall over them, seemingly killing them again. Elisa, Angela, and Bronx reach the place simultaneously, and Goliath returns to his solid form. The captain's soul emerges from the rubble and thanks Goliath for setting him free, while it is later shown that Hakon's spirit is stuck in the stones, still looking for somebody to hate. As they leave the cave, Goliath tells Elisa the entire story. The sun comes up again, and the gargoyles freeze. Elisa leans on them and waits for the day to be over. Monsters. The Avalon tour takes Elisa and the gargoyles back to modern-day Scotland at Loch Ness. They witness a metallic Loch Ness monster on their way, but don't want to stay long in the place. Elisa calls Matt to inform him that she will return in a few days, but his telephone is filled out, and Elisa's message goes unrecorded. Elisa also notes that people at Loch Ness have made it a business to take tourists to the lake to spot the Loch Ness monster, or Nessie. As Elisa and the rest set out, they see a boat pass, but it gets hit by Nessie, which forces it to return. The world tourist's boat also gets hit by Nessie, and it appears that there is one real Loch Ness monster and a metallic one, which is more like a submarine. As the boat topples over, Angela gets knocked out, and although Goliath, Elisa, and Bronx dive in to find her, she gets captured by the submarine. The submarine comes up in an underwater lab, where a diver named Bruno tells their boss that they couldn't catch the Loch Ness monster, but instead caught an adolescent gargoyle girl. The boss first threatens to send Bruno and his men back to Xanatos, but he is glad they found a gargoyle, and it is revealed that the boss is none other than Dr. Anton Savarius. Angela wakes up in a confined pool beside another Nessie and quickly befriends her. Savarius notes that Nessie was not doing well in isolation but has started eating. Savarius thinks Angela is from a new amphibian gargoyle clan, but some DNA tests quickly confirm otherwise. As the day comes, Elisa leaves Goliath and the Bronx safe in the woods and goes to the city. She recognizes Xanatos' goons, load up on supplies, and secretly hitches a ride with them as they arrive at an abandoned castle. Later, she brings Goliath and the Bronx to the abandoned castle above the lab. Meanwhile, Nessie guards Angela's statue, but Savarius orders his men to put Angela in the chain just before she wakes up. He informs Angela that Goliath is her biological father. Savarius further puts a tracer on Nessie and releases her so that she can lead Savarius and his goons to her Big Daddy and a cluster of Loch Ness monsters. When Goliath, Elisa, and Bronx appear, Savarius lets them in and puts them in a dungeon, ordering the goons to shoot Goliath if needed. Savarius leaves with Angela tied to his submarine as it follows Nessie. Meanwhile, the goons observe Goliath, Bronx, and Elisa breaking free. Goliath and Bronx capture one of the goons and force him to drive one of the mini-submarines and follow Savarius. Nessie rejoices after meeting Big Daddy Loch Ness's monster, but Savarius lures them by tying Angela outside. Goliath goes out of their submarine and frees Angela, placing an oxygen mask on her face, while Elisa forces the mini-submarine to clash with the larger one, which causes parts of the larger submarine to break and water to get in. Savarius still shocks Big Daddy, but Angela cuts the tasers and removes the tracking device from Nessie. The Loch Ness monsters attack the submarine, flooding it, but Savarius mysteriously vanishes. Angela bids goodbye to her friend as the cluster of Loch Ness monsters swim away. Goliath and Angela get back on the mini-sub, and as they come out of the water, they see the larger one explode. Angela shares how wonderful it was to see Nessie reunite with her father. As Goliath hugs her, he comments that he feels the same way.
What has happened to you?
Golem. The episode begins with police cars following a man in an unknown city. As the police cars surround the fugitive on a stone bridge, he jumps onto a boat passing under the bridge. Preston Vogel and Halcyon Reynard are also on the boat, and as it passes across the Avalon skiff, Goliath and Halcyon look at each other with alarm. Goliath decides to get Reynard's help to return to New York and leaves to find him, while Elisa ventures into the city. She bumps into a man called Max Lowe, who tells her she is in Prague. Max meets his father in a nearby shop, who asks if Brod has followed him. Max's father urges him to write the words on paper that he has received in a dream from his grandfather, who was a rabbi. Meanwhile, Vogel meets Thomas Brod, the criminal, and delivers him Air Fortress 2 as payment for getting something for Reynard. Goliath approaches Reynard for the favour, but Reynard says he can't do any favours in his condition and asks Goliath to go away. Max and his father plan to stop Brod by resurrecting a golem who has not woken for 400 years. A flashback to 1580 shows an old rabbi uttering a few words in Hebrew to awaken a golem that protects the Jew community from raiders. Waking up the golem requires placing a paper with the words "breath of life" into the golem statue's mouth. Max lacks confidence, but starts the process. However, before he can place the paper in Golem's mouth, Brod and his men break through the walls. They load the golem into Air Fortress 2 and shoot at Max and his father. Goliath and Angela observe and follow the aircraft, while Elisa and Bronx follow on foot. Elisa and Bronx arrive at the place to help Max, while Angela and Goliath try to get on the aircraft. After Max explains everything, Goliath gets a clue about Reynard's plans. Vogel awakens the golem, while Halcyon utters the magic words to transfer his own soul into the stone monster. As Goliath tries to stop him, Reynard, as golem, wraps Goliath in an arm lock to make him out of air. He then asks Vogel to take care of Halcyon's human body as he decides to take a stroll outside. However, immortality and invincibility have driven Reynard on a power trip as he wrecks things on his path. He arrives at Max's place and starts destroying the books to eliminate every spell that can transfer him back. Reynard also shoves Angela against the wall and picks up Max, but Goliath appears and reminds him of his integrity of soul. The fact that Reynard complains it was not his fault and that he only did it to get rid of his flailing body is ironic and hypocritical, as he once lectured Goliath about not taking responsibility for his choices. Goliath's words to his friend Reynard touch a nerve, and he willfully transfers back. Later, Max takes the reanimated golem to take down Brod and his criminal gang. As a gratitude for saving his soul, Reynard offers to take Goliath and his crew back to New York, but Goliath and Elisa refuse as they realize they need to complete this journey on their own.
Drop it, Demona.
Sanctuary. The story in this segment starts in Paris, the city of love, where people get terrified as they watch a gargoyle fly around Notre Dame. The Avalon world tourists also arrive in Paris in the daytime, and leaving the gargoyle statues in the shed, Elisa goes out for a stroll. She is shocked to see Macbeth and human Demona roaming the streets like a couple. The two are quite in love, but it appears Macbeth is oblivious that the woman is Demona. Elisa follows Demona to Notre Dame, but loses her. In the evening, she informs Goliath about her. When Angela addresses Goliath as her father, he clarifies that she must not call him that, as the whole clan is her parents. That was quite hurtful even for Goliath when we were rooting for some family reunion. Goliath asks Angela to protect Elisa and goes to Notre Dame. Demona initially addresses him as love, but gets furious when she realizes it's Goliath. As the two fight, Angela goes up to help Goliath. But before her, Tylog arrives in his new look and armor and proclaims to be Demona's lover. Goliath assumes that Demona is cheating on Tylog with Macbeth, but it's the other way around. Honestly, this pair makes sense for us. Angela overhears the conversation and questions Goliath, but the sun comes up first. Before dawn, Demona and Tylog rehash their plan to establish Nightstone Unlimited with the money they had acquired. Demona's human alias is Dominique Destine, and her mystery business partner is Alexander Tylog. They also plan to dupe Macbeth, who owns a chateau in Paris. Tylog and Demona embrace each other, and as per Greg Weisman, the two have already mated after meeting up. There is also a legitimate Notre Dame gargoyle clan, but they are laying low because of Tylog. In the day, Elisa wonders about what's going on and deduces that since Macbeth and Demona have lost their memories when they were under the Weird Sisters' control, Macbeth may be unaware of Demona being human. Demona and Macbeth get married in his chateau before nightfall, but she reveals herself in front of Macbeth as she turns and captures him. When Tylog arrives, Demona takes him to see Macbeth confined in a cage in his dungeon. It's ironic that the episode is titled Sanctuary, since Macbeth is unsafe even at home. The title of this episode is a tribute to William Faulkner, who wrote a novel by the same name in 1931. Faulkner has not only been Greg Wiseman's favourite author, but his works have also influenced the creation of the Gargoyles. Demona shares her plans to report her new husband missing and later pronounce him dead so that she can inherit his properties. However, Macbeth has hidden a laser gun and uses it to escape into another room. As Macbeth and Demona fight to kill each other, Tylog escapes onto the rooftop, where Goliath and his Avalon crew confront him. Tylog boldly confesses that with Demona and Macbeth out of the picture, he will acquire wealth equal to Xanatos. Elisa gets inside the chateau and tries to stop Macbeth and Demona, but they won't listen, so she subdues them temporarily with a gun. On the rooftop, Tylog drops rubble on Angela, but Bronx protects her. Goliath and Tylog continue to fight, but as the inside of the building quiets down, they stop and Tylog leaves. Goliath helps Macbeth realize that he is capable of love and can find someone to spend his eternal life in the future. Demona also wakes up and sees her daughter Angela, but before they can talk, Tylog comes and takes Demona back. When Angela wonders why Demona still believes in Tylog, Macbeth comments, "Love is blind." Later, despite Goliath's inhibitions, Angela confirms from Elisa that Demona is indeed her mother.
It's coming from our own side!
MIA. At this episode's beginning, we see some punks in London assaulting a man who takes refuge in a shop with magical antiquities. The shop owners are a female unicorn and a lion, but they pretend to be humans wearing masks. They refuse to get involved in what's happening outside the shop. As expected, Avalon brings Goliath, Elisa, Angela and Bronx to London, where they soon discover two gargoyle statues on top of an airplane monument. Surprisingly, one of the statues looks like Goliath. A cab driver notices Elisa and tells her that the memorial was built in honour of gargoyles, who are rumoured to have fought alongside the Brits against the Nazis in 1940. The cab driver offers to take her to the magical antiquities shop in Soho, where she can get more information. Upon arriving, Elisa is surrounded by the same punks, but obviously, the Gargoyles are here to rescue. The shopkeepers Leo and Una from the London clan also come out of the shop and question Goliath about Griff. They inform that Goliath and Griff have been MIA since the 1940s war and blame Goliath for Griff being missing. However, Goliath doesn't remember anyone by that name and insists that he was just a stone statue at that time. Leo and Una refuse to believe him and zap everyone to hide the others from Goliath. Using a lion and unicorn-like gargoyle is actually a reference to the United Kingdom, since the lion stands for England and the unicorn for Scotland. Goliath resorts to using the Phoenix Gate to travel back to 1940 right into war-torn England amidst an aerial dogfight. A gargoyle named Griff saves Goliath and takes him to his home to meet his friends Leo and Una. You can possibly understand that Griff stands for the mythological griffin, which is a half-lion and half-eagle creature that supposedly protects kingdoms. Griff, in this series, is also extremely protective of his country and wants to fight the Nazis, even though his friends are uninterested in being involved in human affairs. Sadly, the design for Griff is nothing like it should have been, and it is a letdown. When several Nazi planes start an air raid, Griff goes out to fight valiantly. Una has special feelings for Griff and asks Goliath to look after him. Goliath and Griff destroy a few planes and get the support of British pilots. However, they also get shot by British cannons who mistake them as Nazi monsters. And after a few near-to-death experiences, Goliath realizes that he cannot change the past and tells Griff that he won't return home in 1940. When a crashing Nazi plane is about to hit them, Goliath again uses the Phoenix Gate, which takes Goliath and Griff to 1995. The idea for this plot is taken from the original concept, where the Gargoyles would have woken up during World War II. Meanwhile, Una and Leo have restrained Elisa, Angela and Bronx in their basement. They claim that Goliath has abandoned them, but Elisa tells them Goliath must have gone back in time. However, when Una blames Goliath for encouraging their friend to participate in the war, Leo realizes they should have accompanied Griff and not let him go alone. He releases Elisa and the rest, while Goliath and Griff arrive outside at the same time. Griff is surprised to see the new world, and Bronx rushes to greet Goliath. It's a happy reunion for Griff with his friends as Goliath and his friends leave. While Goliath has trouble explaining time travel to Elisa and Angela, the London clan comes out of the shop and confronts the thugs who have been terrorizing the people on the streets. Grief. This episode brings back the pack sans Fox and Dingo, who clearly despises the freak show. However, the pack is now helping Emir with something in the pyramids of Egypt on behalf of Xanatos. The coyote robot has been upgraded, and the severed coyote head now appears as an image in the belly of the upgraded robot. Emir was previously mentioned in a passing comment in the first season, while this is his first screen appearance. The Avalon tourists arrive in Egypt, and Goliath sees Coyote entering a secret passageway under the Sphinx with tanner leaves. These leaves are mentioned as a shout-out to a 1940s film called The Mummy's Hand. Emir uses the leaves to resurrect the jackal god, or the god of death, Anubis. Goliath copies Coyote and takes his group through the passageway to enter the underground chamber. The pack immediately starts fighting the travelers and binds them together, after which Emir tells them to leave. Coyote insists that Xanatos will want to know if Emir has achieved immortality, but Emir brushes him off. So now we know about Xanatos' special interest in supporting Emir. Emir binds Anubis, demanding him to bring back his dead son, who died in a car accident. The pack leaves, but Wolf and Hyena are interested in killing the Gargoyles for good, while Jackal is too fascinated by Anubis and makes an excuse to go back. He watches Emir still arguing with Anubis, and Emir threatens to use the papyrus scroll of Thoth to become the avatar of Anubis, so that he can bring his son back. Goliath tries to convince him otherwise, but Emir instructs the pack to get rid of them, and the pack takes the Avalon tourists to a burial chamber. Elisa and the Gargoyles are able to get free from their clutches and go back to the chamber to stop Emir. However, Emir has already started the process, yet his plans are thwarted when Jackal shoves Emir away and accepts Anubis' spirit inside him. The incantation refers to Osiris, Isis, and Seti, and although Greg Weisman was suggested to use Seti in the show, he refused, as he has already used other legendary tricksters in his storytelling, so Anubis was used instead. Avatar Jackal turns Coyote to rust, and when Hyena and Wolf complain, he turns them into babies. Now, Avatar's use of dual voices is fascinating, but Tony Jay's voice for Anubis can be heard as the secondary and slightly out of sync with the other voice actor. An Egypt-themed episode is always the one to look out for, and these little intricacies sure add some dramatic flair. Jackal also drastically ages Goliath and his friends, but that's not all, as he completely wipes off nearby cities and villages. Goliath finally acknowledges Angela as his daughter and asks if he should lose her because of Emir and his plans. Goliath and Angela try to stop Jackal when he is distracted, while Emir gets hold of the papyrus and transfers Anubis' spirit into himself. Being the Avatar makes Emir realize that the dead can't be brought back, and so it's rather disturbing to know that places wiped out by Jackal as Anubis cannot be restored. Emir, as the Avatar, restores Goliath's gang and the pack to normal. He then claims that no one should acquire such power and brings down the temple upon himself. Goliath's gang escapes, but Goliath refuses to ponder on what happened to the pack. Later, Elisa asks Goliath how they could still fight Jackal in their old and frail form, to which Goliath replies that gargoyles age at 1/2 the rate of humans. This is easily one of the darkest plots of the series, but its treatment has been subtle enough not to come as too harrowing. Kingdom. It's been several days since Goliath, Bronx, and Elisa vanished from Manhattan, and this episode finally sheds some light on what is happening in the city since they went missing. As the Gargoyles of Manhattan worry about them, Hudson encourages Brooklyn to assume leadership, but Brooklyn is rather uncomfortable with the idea. However, when Hudson mentions visiting Talon and his clan at the labyrinth, Brooklyn jumps in at the opportunity to meet his crush, Maggie. Broadway visited Elisa's house and brought her cat Cagney, who had not been fed for several days. As Hudson prefers to stay with Cagney, Broadway goes to ask Matt about Elisa, whereas Lexington decides to visit Elisa's family home. The Labyrinth is an underground cyberbiotics facility, now home to Talon's clan and several homeless people. When Brooklyn visits the Labyrinth, he witnesses Fang and some goons who are bullying a homeless man. Brooklyn and Fang fight while Claw watches, but Talon and Maggie arrive soon to break up the fight. Talon gets worried after hearing about Elisa going missing and wonders if Xanatos is responsible. Fang further provokes Talon against Xanatos to get him out of the way. Everyone returns to the clock tower and wonders if they should go and grill Xanatos, but Brooklyn worries if informing him about Goliath being missing would be a good idea. He reluctantly agrees to go, but their unannounced visit alerts Xanatos and Owen, who decide to test Castle Wyvern's latest security upgrades on the Gargoyles. Xanatos' character is tricky to understand and is based on Odysseus. This is also why Xanatos is later revealed to be Greek. The new upgrades don't amount to much for Talon and the Gargoyles as they break through the walls and directly land in Xanatos' office. Xanatos and Owen get intrigued by the news of Elisa and Goliath being missing, and he lets the intruders search through the entire building and even his computer files. He also offers to help track Elisa, and although Talon refuses, it seems that Xanatos will ignore him. Meanwhile, the goons working under Fang show him a door in the labyrinth leading to a storage facility. They find several laser guns in a locked capsule and raid them. When Talon returns, Fang stops him and gives him two choices: either follow his rule or find a new home. A fight ensues when Talon finds that Fang has locked Maggie in the capsule. The goons also use the gun to threaten Talon and other homeless people. However, Maggie convinces Claw to let her go as she realizes Claw is afraid of Fang. After Maggie escapes, Fang locks Talon in the capsule. Claw, who is probably mute, and so he explains the situation most animatedly, which might bring you a smile. Maggie seeks help from the Manhattan clan, and Brooklyn is finally ready to lead as he orders Hudson to join in. As the Manhattan clan attacks Fang and his cronies, Claw is confused about his role. Fang takes Maggie hostage and asks Brooklyn to give up and go. Brooklyn agrees and everyone is astounded. Maggie refuses to leave with him, but Brooklyn hands her the keycard to the capsule, and in a planned ruse, they help Talon out. As Talon pins Fang to the floor, Claw finally gives in and breaks the gun. He then helps Talon lock up Fang for his atrocities against the innocent homeless people. Talon declares that he and Brooklyn have to assume leadership despite what they want. But Brooklyn promises to continue the search for his friends, although protecting the city would be their primary duty. The Hound of Ulster. Right after a quick peek into what's going on in New York, we are back with the Avalon tour, and this time the story centers on some new mythical creatures. A young couple, Rory and Molly, run away from the police as Molly has stolen a jacket. As they walk back home, Rory shares his frustration with his lack of skills and wonders what his future holds. Molly doesn't care about that and asks about the Hound of Ulster that Rory's dad talks about. However, Rory drops the subject and he urges Molly to get home as it gets darker. On their way, both of them hear the hound howl. The howl is let out by the Bronx, who perhaps is unaccustomed to the foggy peat bog smells that Goliath recognizes. Soon, a banshee song overcomes them and causes a headache, as the four of them fall into a bog and get consumed by it. Surprisingly, Bronx is spat back by the bog and comes up looking for others, while a mystical apparition in the shape of a woman appears above the bog. Rory returns home and asks about the hound to his father, who is more interested in reminding Rory that he belongs to a family of great people and is made for greatness. This story is set in Ireland, and Elisa's comment that they are not in Scotland or Kansas is a call-out to the Wizard of Oz. But when Elisa wakes up, she finds herself and the statues of Goliath and Angela inside some sort of stone basement. After waking up, Goliath tries to break the wall but fails and decides to wait, as whoever has put them there will eventually show up. In the outside world, Rory looks for Molly in the woods but finds Bronx instead. Assuming him to be the legendary hound, Rory runs away from Bronx and falls into a ditch. The Banshee appears in the stone room and asks why Oberon has sent them. The Banshee declares that she is one of Oberon's children, and since the gathering is near, he must have sent them to bring her back. The Banshee refuses to listen to Avalon tourists and uses her song to torture and kill them. Traditionally, sirens are the one who lures men with their voices and kills them, while banshees are considered to bring omens of death. The series has, however, sort of mixed the two. Meanwhile, Bronx befriends Rory and rescues him from the ditch. Bronx leads Rory near the bog, and he gets a vision of the stone structure that holds Avalon travelers captive. As Bronx howls, the Banshee thinks Rory must have found the Hound of Ulster, so she rushes out. Molly comes out of the woods and greets Rory, but Bronx growls at her, which forces her to turn into the Banshee. She knocks out Bronx and pulls Rory into the woods. Rory wakes up late in the afternoon at his house, and Molly visits him. Rory assumes that last night's event was only a dream, and his father guesses that he must be talking about the tomb of Cú Chulainn. Rory decides to pursue it, and Molly insists on joining him. When they reach the tomb, Rory starts remembering his past self, the Cú Chulainn, and as the sun sets, its rays form a sword and turn him into the ancient hero. Molly also transforms into the Banshee as she fights Rory. Although Banshee seems like a really evil, manipulative character, it is said that she actually loves Rory and wants to repress his past memories. The fight causes the walls to blast, allowing the captives to come out. Banshee transforms into a giant worm-like creature called Crom Cruach, but the hero gets help from Bronx, who proxies as the Hound of Ulster that accompanied Cú Chulainn. Although Cú Chulainn is a part of the original Celtic myth, the series has taken some liberties, as in the actual story. The Hound and Cú Chulainn are the same. Cú Chulainn defeats Crom Cruach, who turns to vapour and takes the form of the Banshee, before dispersing in the night sky. Finally acquainted with his purpose in life, Cú Chulainn turns back to Rory and his spear into a wooden log. As they leave, Elisa notes that Bronx has become a little too smug to have finally become the main character. Walkabout. The tour now takes us to another part of the world, or another hemisphere. A sighting of a kangaroo, a koala and a crocodile in a forest confirms the place is Australia. The travellers face trouble as soon as they land, as a grey goo erupts from a nearby barren land and crystallises anything on its path. The travellers avoid it by standing atop a high rock as the goo suddenly stops flowing. Somewhere near the Australian desert, Dingo talks with a shaman about getting rid of his past through a dream time. Dingo keeps his power suit in standby mode on a truck and walks across the desert, but comes across the Avalon travellers on his path. Soon, they engage in combat, and Dingo remotely activates his suit of armour, which helps him in the fight. In a nearby remote facility, Fox and her mother, Anastasia, observe the grey goo matter, which they call the Matrix. They speculate about the Matrix's hive mind, and Fox tells her mother that the magnetic field will contain them. Fox is now way ahead into her pregnancy, and it is already confirmed that it's a boy. On the test field, the fight is interrupted by the Matrix again, which emerges from the ground and creates random structures. Dingo helps Goliath and Angela from the projections and structures formed by the Matrix, and together they run from it. When the grey goo stops flowing, they examine it, and Dingo's helmet finds that the goo is composed of nanobots, which are increasingly replicating themselves. He remembers that Coyote commented, "Nanotechnology will be the wave of the future," which is kind of an early prediction. Dingo takes them to the shaman, who is aware of the gargoyles and pretty calm about them. On the other hand, Fox plans to use the Matrix to create a world for herself and Xanatos to suit their needs, but the Matrix goes out of control and takes over the lab with its own AI power, forcing Anastasia and Fox to flee in a helicopter. However, the projections from the Matrix force them to make a quick landing, and they run to the place where Goliath and others are huddled together. It appears Fox recruited Dingo to keep a watch on the field. Following the usual trend, James Avery, who voices the shaman, and Kate Mulgrew, who voices Anastasia, is also from the Star Trek franchise. When Fox introduces her mother as Anastasia Reynard, Goliath and the rest finally learn that she is the daughter of Halcyon Reynard, although Anastasia calls Halcyon her ex-husband. She further explains that inserting an optical drive cartridge into the Matrix will help it stop. Dingo volunteers to do it, while Goliath and Angela provide him cover. However, it doesn't work. and the matrix covers the atomic chamber and starts encroaching as Fox predicts it will now cover the whole world. The shaman suggests that they must talk to Matrix in dream time. He performs a ritual that lets Goliath and Dingo travel to the dream time, where they use their imagination to stop the Matrix. This sequence is remarkable, given that Goliath even creates his Manhattan clan to fight back, while Dingo's imagination adds some humor. When Matrix comments that he is made to bring order, Goliath comments that order is dynamic, while Dingo hastily suggests that Matrix should focus on law and order instead. This somehow works, and the Matrix takes the form of an android and stops spreading. Once they are out of their dream time, the android appears and combines with Dingo's suit to work together. In the end, Dingo does a heel-face turn for good as he remembers his time as a celebrity and now plans to be a real hero in Australia. Mark of the Panther. In the beginning, we see a group of hunters tracking down a panther until a gunshot is heard. And next, the Avalon tourists arrive in a very dense jungle somewhere in the African continent. They are quite startled to see the bloody body of a panther lying with its skin gone. Elisa also finds her mother, Diane Marza, telling stories to children in a village in now what is confirmed as Nigeria. A slightly different style of animation tells the story of the Panther Queen, who was transformed by Anansi, the spider, into a female human for mocking other animals. Anansi asked the Panther Queen to build a city for him in the shape of a web in exchange for returning her to her original form. The Panther Queen married Obar of the Hulka tribe, gave birth to several children, and created the city of Kara Diji. However, when she turned back into a panther, she felt lonely and asked Anansi to change her children too. Anansi asked her to choose only one, and when the Panther Queen marked her eldest son, the trickster spider told her son everything and asked him to kill the Panther Queen. However, once the son realized the truth, he willfully decided to transform, and Anansi had to oblige. It angered the trickster, and he forced all the humans out of Kara Diji, but that only made Anansi lonely. Coincidentally, Greg Weisman was also the head writer for Marvel's spectacular Spider-Man series, and Disney now owns Marvel. As Diane finishes the story, her friend Farah Maku congratulates her and shows her a panther, which will be set free after the celebrations. Elisa comes out of the bushes and greets her mother, only to be scolded by her for being missing for so long. There is also some increasing tension between Angela and Goliath, as Angela wants Goliath to act like her father. Suddenly the hunters arrive and terrorize the people, triggering Farah Maku to change into a panther. A woman hunter named T holds a vengeance against the panthers and chases after Maku. The Gargoyles save Elisa and Diane from the hunter. And as Diane gets perturbed that the monsters are her daughter's friends, Elisa confirms they are not monsters. After releasing the locked panther and locking the hunters in the cage instead, the party follows Farah and T. Farah as the panther escapes, and Goliath can only catch T, who also transforms into a panther and falls into the water. T as panther picks up Farah's scent and follows, while Goliath takes Bronx's help to track them. The trail leads to an abandoned Kara Diji, and while Elisa, Angela and Bronx go off in one direction, Diane and Goliath go in the other. A brief discussion between Elisa and Angela shows how Angela craves her father's attention and is envious of the smothering Elisa is getting from her mother. On the other hand, Diane helps Goliath realize that all children need attention, and Angela, being the only hatchling with him, sure needs some. Both groups also get trapped but manage to escape, while Anansi gets alerted of their arrival. Farah and T transform back to human form, and T injures Farah. As Diane and the Avalon tourists arrive, T reveals that Farah marked her in Abuja and ruined her chance of everyday life in the city. Well, the things people do for love. Farah claims to love her and tells her they belong in the village. He also confirms that he found Anansi by following the legend and asking him to turn him into the werepanther. With others bringing him food, Anansi has become a giant, fat spider monster. As Anansi plans to transform everyone into werepanthers, Angela instructs everyone to cut the web, as Anansi is too fat to fight on the ground. Initially, the writers planned on making Farah and T were jaguars, but jaguars are native to South America, so it was changed to panthers. As Goliath stabs Anansi, the spider vanishes away, but later, a tiny spider can be seen scurrying away. The little spider was later confirmed as Anansi, as he made a cameo in The Gathering. With Anansi gone, the curse stays, but T and Farah reunite, promising to protect the jungle and tribe as panthers. Goliath also calls Angela daughter, and as the sun comes up, Elisa decides to tell her mother the whole story about the Gargoyles. Pendragon. It is an unnaturally stormy night in New York, and Macbeth is up to something with Banquo and Fleance. Simultaneously, Arthur Pendragon arrives in present-day London, and his skiff sinks, indicating the end of his Avalon tour. It's a bit odd that Arthur arrives in London after Goliath and his gang, but it also seems like the first time Arthur has come across modern civilization. Arthur arrives in Westminster Abbey, looking for the Stone of Destiny and his beloved sword, Excalibur. However, the sword is not there, and instead, Griff of the London Gargoyle clan confronts Arthur. The two soon get acquainted, thanks to both having Goliath as an ally. The stone speaks to Arthur and promises to take him to the location if he can guess it correctly. Griff recites a poem that gives a clue about Excalibur's location, and as Arthur repeats the line, Isle of Towers, he and Griff get transported to Manhattan. Macbeth was chanting something towards the stormy clouds when Arthur and Griff dropped from the sky. Since Macbeth has lost any memories of Avalon, he fails to recognize Arthur. The Manhattan clan also arrives at the point, which is a cue for Macbeth and his people to leave. As Arthur and Griff get acquainted with the Manhattan clan, they share notes on Goliath and his gang having visited London, Prague, and Nigeria. Macbeth uses a glass orb and incantations to produce a ball of light that can sneak up on Arthur and the Gargoyles. So when Brooklyn further decodes Griff's rookery poem to reach the lake in Central Park, the ball of light follows. King Arthur calls on the Lady of the Lake, who takes a small test of courage to see if Arthur is still a worthy leader. When satisfied, she directs them to a maze on the other side of the river, where the sword lies in the heart of a dragon's statue. Lexington deduces that she must be talking about the maze in Brooklyn. However, Arthur and the Gargoyles' plan to obtain Excalibur is foiled by Macbeth and his minions. The fight within the maze delays Griff and Arthur long enough for Macbeth to get hold of the Excalibur first. Out of the various spin-offs planned, a series called Pendragon was discussed, focusing on Arthur and Griff's quest to find the Holy Grail. In this story, Griff helps Arthur, as the kings of the past, get into a brawl for ultimate power. Amidst the fight, the stone dragon wakes up, and Macbeth tries to fight it with the Excalibur. However, when the sword bounces off and lands on Arthur's hand, he breaks it to prove it's not the real Excalibur. The stone dragon captures them, and Griff gets on the dragon's back. Outside the garden, the Manhattan clan manages to subdue Macbeth's minions and watches the dragon flying away with the two former kings. An epiphany about the last part of the poem hits Arthur, and he asks Griff for help to free himself. Arthur breaks the red stone heart of the dragon, which frees the Excalibur. Holding on to his honor, Macbeth kneels before King Arthur and accepts him as the true king, but refuses to be his knight, as he has been a king for far too long. Macbeth supposedly helps Arthur and Griff return to England later. Once at the clock tower, Arthur tells the Gargoyles of his plans to explore the city during the day and look for his friend Merlin from the next night. Griff wishes to accompany him in his adventures, and so just before dawn, Arthur bestows knighthood on Sir Griff. With King Arthur's Avalon adventures ending here, it's time to see what happens with Goliath and his gang. Eye of the Storm. Once again, the story of the Gargoyles focuses on the Avalon tourists, who have now reached the snowy lands of Scandinavia. While the cold is not bothersome to the Gargoyles, Elisa is no Elsa, as she is almost freezing. An old man with one eye appears to them and offers Elisa a coat in exchange for the Eye of Odin that Goliath is carrying. When the tourists refuse the exchange, the man leaves with a warning. It is pretty clear the old man after the eye is its true bearer, Odin, the Norse god. Elisa seeks refuge from a car driven by Erik Sturluson, who takes Elisa to his home. Eric's son Gunther guesses that Elisa must be lying about hiking, as she is not wearing a jacket like them. While Elisa is recovering from the cold, Goliath is again attacked by a one-eyed polar bear, and when the gargoyles fight it together, the polar bear falls into a pond and vanishes, making Goliath realize the old man and the polar bear are one. Odin now appears riding a horse as he breaks into the Sturluson's home to capture Elisa. Odin reveals his identity and again tries to bargain for Elisa's life, but Goliath dons the eye of Odin and transforms into a monstrous version of himself. Odin is forced to give back Elisa and retreat, but it's soon sunrise, and the gargoyles turn to stone, except for Goliath. He reasons that the eye of Odin has now removed such limitations. Eric and Gunther also arrive looking for Elisa, who now has some explaining to do. Goliath flies away to check on Odin, and as another blizzard starts, Goliath returns to tell them it's all Odin's punishment for not giving the eye. He asks Elisa and Sturlusons to pack everything up so that they can find sanctuary elsewhere. Eric says he knows a large cave, and Goliath supports the idea. They also tie up the statues of Angela and Bronx on the car's roof. Gunther speaks about the stallion Sleipnir being Odin's ride. However, as per Norse myth, Sleipnir is supposed to have 8 legs. Once everyone is inside the cave, Goliath goes out again. But Angela notices it's all fake, and Goliath is the cause of the weather changes. They confront Goliath, but he is too patronizing and imprisons them inside the cave with a large boulder. The Eye of Odin has changed Goliath for the worse as he challenges Odin to a battle. As the two fight, the others try to remove the boulder. Without the eye, Odin fails to defeat Goliath, but as he moves the ground, the boulder moves, letting Elisa and the others out. Elisa and Angela try to convince Goliath to stop and remove the eye, but he doesn't care, and instead puts their life in danger. Odin's comment that Goliath is the danger proves true. However, a cry from Angela works, as Goliath realizes he is endangering his daughter's life. He saves Angela and removes the Eye of Odin from himself, while Odin picks it up and wears it. Odin apologizes for using the wrong tactics to get his eye back, while Goliath apologizes for his one-track and overprotective mind. Odin rides off to the sun on a rainbow bridge, which is the Bifrost leading to Asgard, the home of the Norse gods. The New Olympians. After Norse mythology, it is time for Greek mythology as the boat arrives at a hidden place called New Olympus. But the place doesn't fare well for Elisa, who gets arrested by New Olympian guards, Taurus, Helios, and Chiron. As the gargoyles come to save her, the New Olympians inform them that they have no problems with the gargoyles, but they hate humans, so Lisa would be taken to their leader, Boreas. The New Olympians hold significant grudges and hatred towards humans. They want Elisa to be imprisoned, but Goliath vouches for her. Boreas hears everyone out and deduces that Elisa doesn't pose any threat, but can't be allowed to go back to the mainland at the risk of exposing New Olympus. The New Olympians have varied appearances and are considered mixtures of humans, third race, and other animals. Taurus also mentions that his ancestor, the Minotaur, was also killed by humans, which is a classic reference to the Greek hero Theseus. Life on New Olympus proves troublesome for Elisa and her gargoyle friends as they get into an altercation with all the residents who shove and ridicule Elisa. Freeing Elisa is a sham as Taurus arrests her again and takes her to prison, where she comes across an imprisoned shapeshifter called Proteus. Proteus mocks Taurus about his dead father by taking his form. Elisa relates to Taurus and tries to form a bond, but he ignores her, although he does give a piece of his mind to the rioters trying to hurt Elisa. Meanwhile, Goliath has a word with Boreas, who tells the gargoyles that imprisoning Elisa meant protecting her. Goliath still sneaks into the prison and subdues Chiron, yet Proteus shapeshifts into Elisa. He directs Goliath to remove the force field from his cell, but instead locks Goliath in his place. Proteus then changes to Goliath and escapes with Elisa. As the news spreads, Taurus and Chiron fight with Angela and Bronx at the beach, but they soon turn into stone with daylight. This is also a clue for Elisa to realize she is not with the real Goliath, as he doesn't turn to stone. As Proteus plans to blow up the island, Elisa makes an excuse and leaves. Elisa also faces the same kind of failure when she pulls Helios off his hoverbike and tells him about Proteus. Elisa is forced to fight Helios, but quickly subdues him and hijacks his ride. Elsewhere, Proteus takes the form of Taurus and climbs on a tower to blow up the island. However, Elisa lures the real Taurus to the place. Proteus again changes to Goliath, but this time, Taurus believes Elisa and fights Proteus. After Taurus subdues Proteus, he ensures that Proteus cannot shapeshift for a while. Taurus is impressed with Elisa as he finds her as the first human who is different from the ancient legends. As all the Avalon tourists leave the island, Taurus and Boreas realize it might be right to be prepared for more humans to find the island. The Green. The next adventure takes the Avalon tourists into a dense rainforest in Guatemala, where they witness human loggers shooting at two gargoyle-like creatures. Jackal and Hyena have started freelancing as they enter the scene and capture the gargoyles. But Goliath can't just observe, and so he attacks back. Although the gargoyles defeat Jackal and Hyena by throwing them into the river, Hyena has injured Bronx. They free the two gargoyles, who introduce themselves as Zafiro and Obsidiana, and take them to meet the others. Bronx's injury acts up, but as it's long till sundown, Obsidiana uses plant parts to prevent infection and help with the pain. The local gargoyles take the Avalon tourists to a Mayan pyramid in the middle of the forest, where they meet two other gargoyles named Jade and Turquesa. The Mayan gargoyles show them a pendant, which ensures that they do not need the stone sleep. Hyena and Jackal overhear the conversation with their cybernetic body parts and return to a nearby villa to research the sun amulet. Since they locate the amulet in a New York museum, Hyena goes to New York to destroy the amulet, while Jackal waits for the moment when all the gargoyles are stone, and he can quickly destroy them. Preston Vogel meets Jackal, revealing that he has hired the twins to stop the gargoyles from terrorizing the loggers. On the other hand, Elisa and the gargoyles have different views about protecting the woods. Elisa insists on finding out the legal owner of the forest and ensuring that everything is done appropriately so that people who need wood can also get it. However, Goliath and others believe that the forest belongs to no one and that every plant must be saved. Meanwhile, a fight breaks out at the American Museum of Natural History as the Wyvern gargoyles try to stop Hyena from destroying the sun amulet. The gargoyles are able to subdue Hyena and get the amulet, but wonder if they should destroy it. They take it back to the clock tower, but thankfully turns to stone before they can destroy it. There were also plans for more Mayan gargoyle adventures, where they would have gotten the sun amulet back from the Manhattan clan. In Guatemala, Jackal unleashes havoc on the gargoyles as he cuts several trees and even causes a forest fire to distract them. Elisa and the gargoyles get in to stop the fire from spreading, but Obsidiana's pendant gets stuck in a tree. So when the sun comes up, Goliath, Angela and Obsidiana petrify, but Bronx doesn't, as the good boy has got the pendant. Elisa and the rest of the awake gargoyles thrash Jackal and throw him directly into the pool of the Cyberbiotics villa. And Elisa returns the pendant to Obsidiana. She suggests taking a few specimen plants from the rainforest and transplanting them in Avalon to prevent their extinction. Nevertheless, things do end well for the Mayan clan. Vogel calls off operations in the rainforest as he receives a phone call, while an unconscious hyena gets arrested by the NYPD. Sentinel. The Avalon World tourists arrive at what looks like Easter Island, and Angela notes that the statues are made from ancient rocks. However, things go haywire right from the start, as someone has cameras on the island who keeps a watch on the tourists and hurts Bronx with a taser gun while Elisa goes missing. Archaeologists Lydia Duane and Arthur Morwood Smith find Elisa on their way. But surprisingly, Elisa does not remember who she is. The archaeologists take her to a local doctor who realizes that Elisa has unexplained memory loss, although her general knowledge is intact. After seeing her police ID card, Lydia remembers meeting Elisa while transporting the Scrolls of Merlin. Goliath enters their hotel room unannounced to pick up Elisa, but she draws her gun on him. However, the gun is out of bullets, and despite all the protests, Goliath leaves with her. Meanwhile, Bronx and Angela have also been abducted by an alien who thinks gargoyles are another alien race called Space Spawn and are enemies of an intergalactic war. Goliath brings back Elisa to the Easter Island statues and tells her everything, but Elisa is overwhelmed by the onslaught of information. Soon, Goliath gets lured by a hologram of Angela and is captured by the alien, who calls himself Nokar. Nokar has a face similar to the statues of Easter Island, as he explains that humans made them as a homage to the aliens who allied with the humans and protected them. Nocka makes Elisa believe that Goliath is the enemy who manipulated her memory, so Nocka erased it earlier. He assures her that Elisa's original memory will return within a few days. If this is not frustrating enough, it gets ridiculous when Elisa follows Nocka into his underground spaceship. While in captivity, Angela informs Goliath that Nocka is a sentinel placed on Earth centuries back to protect their galaxy in an intergalactic war. However, not witnessing any gargoyle before has made him mistake them as aliens. Still, when Nocka attempts to put an end to gargoyles, Elisa's instinct kicks up and she breaks their cages, allowing them to get rid of the serpent-like laser machine that Nocka planned on using. The struggle has blown off the roof of the underground spaceship, and Goliath helps his gang escape from there. Nocka tries to stop Goliath from escaping one more time, but their fight almost destroys the spacecraft. As all of them are out in the open, Nocka brings out his spaceship above the ground to kill the gargoyles. This time Elisa stands guard and asks Nocka to stop. Nocka stands down as he claims that his wiping technology only erases false memories but not real feelings, and so Elisa's protectiveness for the gargoyles must stem from the genuine bond. As Nocka chooses to believe the gargoyles, he feels dejected about losing any allies on the island. Coincidentally, the archaeologists and their doctor arrive looking for Elisa. Elisa tells Nocka to trust the archaeologists and work with them to protect the land. As Elisa leaves with the gargoyles, she wonders if the intergalactic war is already over and Nocka might be unaware. As the Avalon skiff heads towards a coming storm, Elisa stays vigilant to protect the gargoyles, who have now gone to their stone sleep. Bushido. The story begins in Japan, where a gargoyle clan catches thieves stealing bags of money. The gargoyles, dressed in Japanese clothing, live in harmony with the locals. One of the gargoyles, Yama, gets tired of capturing criminals, and a suspicious-looking businessman called Taro assures him that everything will change that night. As the Avalon tourists land, Bronx runs and greets Kai, the clan leader. Kai informs Goliath and the others that they are from the Ishimura clan. However, with no students left, the clan now protects the village. As the sun comes up, the gargoyles get on the walls of their shrine, but instead of facing outward, they sit facing inward as a show of trust. However, the human protectors get knocked out by several ninjas dressed in red garb. Even in her kimono, Elisa gives them a fight, but Taro knocks her out with a tranquilizer dart. When Elisa and the other human guards wake up, the gargoyle statues are gone. Instead, the gargoyles wake up in what seems like a theme park with a glass dome. Taro approaches them and says that the villagers felt the gargoyles had become a burden, so he brought them to a duplicate village where they could interact with the outside world. Goliath and Angela refuse to believe that Elisa will let them go willingly, and Goliath's experience with Xanatos definitely alerts him to such affairs. Taro further informs the clan that he has invited some children to visit the place before dawn, and Yama thinks this will convince the clan to stay. Meanwhile, at the shrine, Elisa and another villager look for clues about where Taro could have taken them. Since Taro is native to Ishimura, it is difficult for everyone to distrust him. The members of the Ishimura clan do not feel like living in the theme park, and Goliath tries to warn Kai of the repercussions of revealing themselves to the human world. Yama and Goliath fight, but Taro lets Goliath and his clan go, only to imprison them later. When Kai also decides to leave, Taro shoots him with the tranquilizer dart and initiates the security measures against the Ishimura clan, surprising Yama. By this time, Elisa and the villager have arrived outside the theme park and realize that Taro is planning a press conference with reporters waiting outside. Elisa and the villager sneak in and hijack the control room to free Goliath and his clan from the restraints. Unaware of what awaits him, Taro dons a samurai-styled powered armor, reminding us that we miss Xanatos and his shenanigans. But that hope can wait, as things get interesting when Yama realizes Taro has lied about the children. Goliath intends to give Taro a beating, but Yama insists on getting the payback. Although Taro earns redemption, the spin-off comic book Gargoyles Bad Guys informs that Yama was exiled until he feels his honor is back. As the gargoyles escape from the other side, Elisa and the villagers usher in the reporters only to brutally humiliate Taro, who is now stuck to a giant robotic gargoyle statue. After the gargoyles return, it is morning again, and the villager promises to teach his children Bushido and bring back the forgotten art form. As Elisa leaves with her clan, she hopes for more trustworthy humans. Cloud Fathers. We are now inching towards the end of the Avalon World Tour, as the story is set on the nearby land of Arizona. A dusty wind blows off machinery at a Xanatos construction site, and the face of a coyote appears in the dust. In 1960, Arizona, a man tries to stop his son, Peter Maza, from going to New York. As Peter leaves, a similar dust appears. In 1996, older Peter meets his youngest daughter Beth in Arizona, who takes him to investigate the shady Xanatos construction. Meanwhile, the skiff brings the Avalon travelers to Flagstaff University, Arizona. Elisa recalls that her sister Beth studies there and worries that she is in danger. A security guard, looking exactly like young Peter, allows older Peter and Beth to enter Xanatos' construction site. Not only does older Peter fail to recognize his young self, but it's also unnatural when the guard says they were expecting him. It just gets worse when Xanatos and his men arrest Peter and Beth for trespassing and inform them that he has not appointed any guard. The following day, Peter and Beth get bail and return home, where they find Elisa and her gargoyle friends. Although Diane has informed them of the developments, Peter seems wary of the gargoyles. Later, the Mazas and the gargoyles decide to investigate Xanatos' compound together. However, Peter still holds grudges against his father and refuses to meet him afterward. Xanatos reviews the security footage and tells his robot Coyote 4.0 that he knew the Mazas were innocent but wanted to avoid being caught by the tribal police. Goliath and Angela reach the compound and discover a coyote soil carving, but they are soon apprehended by Coyote 4.0. The Mazas and Bronx also arrive and capture the security guard. Elisa and Beth realize that he looks exactly like young Peter. Trouble also intensifies for Goliath and Angela as they get restrained by Xanatos, who confesses that he is up to cliched villainy. The security guard alerts the Mazas about Xanatos' plan to desecrate the place and warns them about the gargoyles being in danger and disappears. The Mazas rush in to save Goliath and Angela, and it appears Xanatos is well aware of Angela being Goliath's daughter. As they all escape, Xanatos notices the security guard and sends Coyote 4.0 after them. Peter decides to inform the tribal police, and Beth has an idea that the security guard might be the trickster god Coyote, who is trying to help them save the land. At the tribal village, they witness the leaders doing a ceremonial dance in honor of the Cloud Fathers. Peter remembers doing the dance wearing a coyote mask at his father's request. One of the dancers now reveals himself as Coyote, the trickster, but Coyote 4.0 kidnaps him. The coyote is another one of Oberon's children and has been the inspiration for Xanatos' robot. When the real coyote wonders how the robot captured him, Xanatos reveals he melted the cauldron of life to create the magical robot. It seems Xanatos really knows how to recycle stuff. Anyway, all this amounts to Xanatos' latest bid to obtain immortality from the trickster. Goliath and the gang arrive looking for Coyote, and Coyote 4.0 locks up the real god inside itself. Peter is still reluctant to believe, but he dresses up as a dancer and wears the coyote mask to confuse Xanatos, which ultimately helps the good guys defeat the bad ones. Xanatos leaves after being really irked by Goliath. The real coyote explains that Peter and he had been connected since the time Peter did the dance, and when Peter left for New York to pursue his police career, part of Coyote left with him. Coyote leaves after being whole again, while Peter finally agrees to meet his father. It gets pretty emotional at the end of the episode, as Peter's father is no longer alive. Peter apologizes to his grave as the sun comes up. Ill met by moonlight. The skiff returns to Avalon with the travelers as Elisa longs for home. The Avalon clan, along with Princess Catherine and Tom, welcomes them, but suddenly an earthquake brings forth the Fey King Oberon and his wife Titania, joined by the Weird Sisters. The Weird Sisters complains of the gargoyles and humans encroaching upon the island. Oberon orders the gargoyles and humans to leave. While unaware of their identity, Gabriel, Tom, and Boudica intend to attack. Oberon introduces himself and almost buries them underground until Titania reasons that Oberon should at least give them a chance for a fair fight. Their conversation further reveals that Titania and Oberon are divorced, and both Titania and Puck have mingled with humans. However, Titania promises to join Oberon once again if he wins against the gargoyles. Titania reduces Oberon's power, and he chooses Goliath, Gabriel, and Angela as his match. As the contestants leave, Titania leaves clues for Elisa, Tom and Catherine to ensure the Gargoyles win. Realizing that Oberon and his children are vulnerable to iron, they melt the iron chains Magus used to trap the weird sisters. There is also a talk about silver bullets, but Catherine says that's for werewolves and vampires, which apparently also exist in the Gargoyles world. Meanwhile, Goliath, Gabriel and Angela create a trap for Oberon, which proves incredibly useless. Oberon summons the powers of the trees to fight, but the Gargoyles manage to get free. As the Gargoyles fly over a volcano, Oberon creates a hand out of lava. But again, Goliath's strategy helps them escape its clutches. The Gargoyles escape through a fissure and inside the volcano, ultimately emerging from a river. Oberon confronts them again, now using the powers of the terrain. As a last resort, Goliath challenges Oberon for hand-to-hand combat. Oberon agrees, but the Gargoyles' punches only shatter Oberon's outer appearance as he reveals a crystal form inside. Oberon knocks them out and brings them back to Elisa and Catherine to show that he has won the hunt. However, it's still not over as Tom and another gargoyle, Ophelia, bring forth an iron bell and start ringing it. The sound of the bell incapacitates Oberon, but as he falls to his knees, Tom's honor stops him from striking Oberon. Having won, Catherine demands asylum for the humans and gargoyles in Avalon so that they can live peacefully. Titania and the Weird Sisters also appear as Titania seconds Catherine's demands. Oberon agrees to the demands and is even moved by Tom's act of honor. He promises that Goliath's clan will be his honor guard and no harm will come to them from his children. After Titania restores his power, she again agrees to be his wife. Before leaving, Titania says helping them is a repayment, but Goliath cannot recognize her. It alludes to Walkabout, as Titania's identity in the human world will be revealed soon. As the Avalon tourists prepare to leave again. In the middle of the ocean, Goliath gets stuck by lightning, and their skiff finally reaches Manhattan. However, it's not the Manhattan they knew, but a dystopian world. Several Steel Clan gargoyles appear and abduct Elisa and Angela, while an old Matt Bluestone and Claw rescues Bronx and Goliath from the river. Matt informs Goliath that it's been 40 years since Goliath and the gang left for Avalon. Matt takes Goliath and Bronx through the city, which is now run by Xanatos' Talon cyborgs, Tylog cyborgs, and Steel Clan robots. The people are homeless, and Captain Chavez's daughter is in dire condition. The eerie building has become the Eerie Pyramid, a highly modernized structure that broadcasts Xanatos speaking to the people as some world leader. Matt also shows Goliath a statue of Hudson, made in his honor after he died fighting Xanatos 32 years back. Brooklyn also appears, but punches Goliath for abandoning him, whereas Broadway has become blind due to the war. Brooklyn argues with Goliath and suggests they could use the Phoenix Gate to go back in time and prevent all this from happening, but Goliath refuses. Demona joins them as Brooklyn's wife, as Brooklyn informs them that Tylog has died in the Clone Wars. Future Lexington has cybernetic upgrades, and he informs that Fox and her son Alexander have infiltrated Xanatos' lair. Goliath is shocked to learn that Fox is helping the rebels and that Alexander loathes his father. They see a broadcast of a fight between Xanatos and Alexander, which happens in cyberspace. Xanatos uses the opportunity to locate the rebels and kills his son, as he is now immortal and doesn't need an heir. The rebels decide to go to Castle Wyvern, which is still part of Eerie Pyramid, and Goliath believes Angela and Elisa are held there. On their way, Demona asks Goliath to give the Phoenix Stone to Angela, their daughter, so she can live peacefully in the past. The fight at Castle Wyvern leads to Matt, Bronx and Claw getting devoured by cyberspace. Broadway gets shot and dies, while Lexington is taken away by cyborgs. Finally, Goliath, Demona, and Brooklyn are taken to cyberspace, where Angela and Elisa are imprisoned. Goliath learns that the real Xanatos had died fighting Hudson, and the Xanatos computer program now runs the show. Goliath defeats the program, but can only save Elisa. However, he is shocked when Lex reveals himself as the evil mastermind. It is later stated that evil Lexington is actually his clone, Brentwood. This episode is truly chaotic, and perhaps our least favourite one. With too much happening together, the story just gets lost somewhere. Goliath kills evil Lexington and escapes with Elisa, as the eerie building blows up. But so she asks her to get it. As Elisa pesters Goliath to hand it himself, Goliath realizes that something is amiss. It turns out everything was either a dream or a prophecy, as shown by the trickster Puck as he wanted the Phoenix Gate. This episode of Disney has been truly unique, as for a long time it has been the only animated show to feature so many main characters dying, even if it's a dream sequence or alternate reality. Puck declares that Oberon's children cannot be directly involved, so he opts for such elaborate measures. He felt that obtaining the Phoenix Gate would appease Oberon, and he would let Puck stay longer with the humans. Goliath refuses to give it to Puck and wakes up back in the skiff. He opens the Phoenix Gate portal and hurls the artifact into it, ensuring nobody gets it. However, it has supposedly been through a time loop. The episode follows several different tropes, like the bad future, similar to X-Men stories and Holy Grail storylines. It does, however, make Goliath realize how important it is for them to return home in time. The Gathering, Part 1. It is now time for the Gathering, which has been hinted at for a long time. Several mythical creatures of the Fae community, or Children of Oberon, have assembled in Avalon as they pay respect to their king. Odin also pays his respect to the Lord when the Weird Sisters forcibly bring Banshee into the room. Everyone laughs at Banshee, and she screams at Odin in retaliation. The two fight, entertaining Oberon, but he gets irritated after a while and mutes Banshee until she learns humility. For his rebellious servant Puck, Oberon decides to confront him in the human world. He speaks to Catherine through a magical mirror and asks her to lend her best tracker, Boudica. Meanwhile, in Manhattan, another gathering is taking place at the Eerie building, as Fox is in labor. Petroxanatos meets with Anastasia, Halcyon Reynard, his aide-de-camp, or personal assistant Vogel. Petros is surprised that Vogel and Owen look so alike, but Vogel denies being related. When Anastasia announces that she has remarried her first husband, Reynard gets surprised and may be disheartened, while Owen panics. David Xanatos brings his newborn son, Alexander Fox Xanatos, to meet everyone, but later Owen warns Xanatos not to leave Alexander alone with Anastasia. Oberon changes his appearance to a human, and Boudica's into a dog so he can walk without catching people by surprise. However, upon entering the Eerie building, Oberon gets a whiff of Titania. He reveals that Anastasia is Titania, which explains why she looks much younger than Halcyon Reynard, who has weakened with time. Titania comes clean to her daughter, but worries that, being brought up by humans, Fox has lost her inherited magical powers. As Alexander still has much potential, Titania plans to bring up Alexander in Avalon and gets Oberon's permission. Xanatos protests, and it's incredible to watch the cunning duo act as the protective parent for once. There is also great chemistry between Fox and Xanatos, something that is lacking between Goliath and Elisa. Xanatos reminds Oberon that taking a child away from their parents is indeed interference in the human world, but Oberon doesn't care and gives them 1 hour to bid goodbye. At the clock tower, the Manhattan clan watches the news about Alexander's birth when Goliath and the gang return. Goliath introduces Angela as his daughter, and the reunion is a happy moment for the Gargoyles after a long time. It has been apparently 6 months since Goliath and his group left, and June was confirmed as their month of return. Owen affirms that he knew about Anastasia and had prepared security measures for Xanatos. Owen also instructs Xanatos about Oberon's weakness and leaves, saying he can't get involved anymore, further indicating that he is hiding something massive. Goliath brings Elisa and her cat Cagney back to her apartment and leaves as it rains in stormy Manhattan. When he returns to the clock tower, Anastasia appears to them and reveals herself as Titania. She seeks the Gargoyles' help in protecting Fox and Alexander during the upcoming fight, but obviously Goliath doesn't want to separate a child from its parent, so Titania leaves angrily, asking him not to interfere. Goliath and his clan still rally to the Eerie building to offer protection. On the other hand, Xanatos is upset that Owen left, but initiates Owen's security measures, which shield the building, preventing Oberon from entering. Oberon puts Manhattan to sleep and grows to the size of the building for the showdown. The Gathering, Part 2. As everyone falls asleep except for the Manhattan Clan Gargoyles and the eerie building occupants, Oberon tries to break the shield surrounding the building. Petros supports his son and notices that Oberon's size is getting smaller as he uses more energy. Xanatos sends the new Iron Clan robot Gargoyles, which can cause some damage to the Fey King. The Manhattan Clan also appears, as Goliath declares that he will prevent the child from being taken away. When Oberon restrains Goliath with his hair, Angela tells Brooklyn that Oberon is vulnerable to iron. Both of them help Goliath to get free, while simultaneously Reynard and Vogel enter the scene in Air Fortress 2. Reynard orders the release of the Cybots to fight Oberon. The Cybots prove a formidable source of power as they sap the energy from Oberon, whereas the Gargoyles distract him enough. As the time for ultimate doom comes, Xanatos helps the Gargoyles and vice versa. Oberon realizes that anger is clouding his judgment, and he turns the rain into snow pellets as Air Fortress 2 freezes and makes a tricky landing, while even the Gargoyles find it challenging to glide. Oberon gets on the building by destroying the force field from beneath the building, and Xanatos comes out in his new iron power suit. Petros shares that he is proud of his son, which makes David glad as he fights for his own son. Goliath and his gang also stand behind Xanatos to fight. But when Petros impales Oberon with an iron harpoon, it makes him old and frail, further triggering his wrath. Owen finally turns up and reveals himself as Puck. He uses the rubble as a visual aid to explain how he became interested in the mortals in the first place. Puck was intrigued by Titania's transformation into Anastasia and her involvement with Reynard, so he got inspired by Vogel's stiff nature and transformed himself into Owen Burnett to work for the Reynards. However, the Reynards were too boring for Puck, so he started working for Fox and her then-boyfriend, Xanatos. As Puck tells his story, he uses the visual aids as weapons to thrash Oberon further. Puck still couldn't resist revealing himself to Xanatos and offered the two conditions, which were either a wish from Puck or a lifetime of service from Owen. Oberon goes to Fox's chamber to pick up baby Alexander, but Fox's dormant magical powers kick in and she shoves Oberon out in a fit of anger. The constant bludgeoning has left Oberon extremely disgruntled as he wants to end it and return to his gathering. Goliath pleads to Oberon that if Fox can demonstrate magical powers, surely Alexander can be taught to do the same, while he stays with Xanatos and Fox. Goliath further indicates that Puck can stay as Owen to do the honors of being Alexander's tutor. Although Puck gladly agrees, it's not all roses for him as Oberon banishes Puck from Avalon forever and takes away his powers. Puck protests first, but turning back to Owen, he accepts his fate. Before Oberon and Titania depart for Avalon, Titania says something in her daughter's ears. Something tells us this will be an exciting twist in the future. Oberon also comments that Manhattan will wake up in the morning, and everything that happened will feel like a midsummer dream. This is a direct reference to Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, which had Oberon, Titania, and Puck as major characters. This might possibly undo the deaths from the previous episode. Xanatos shares his gratitude to Goliath for helping out in protecting his son. When the Gargoyles return home, Angela shares that she is interested in seeing this new island, and Broadway shares his excitement as they turn to stone with the rising sun. Vendettas. The Avalon chapter is finally over, and the newest challenges for the Gargoyles are much closer to home. Before we get into that, the episode starts with Wolf from the Pack hijacking a car from the mountain roads of Wyvern, Scotland. Wolf has somehow obtained a possessed Viking battle axe. A few weeks later, Wolf can be seen eating from a dumpster when the axe speaks and alerts him about the Gargoyles flying nearby. However, Wolf is not the only one with accounts to settle, as a young man named Vinny also has secret grudges against the Gargoyles. Vinny obtains a custom-made massive weapon, which he has named Mr. Carter, to get back at the Gargoyles. Vinny remembers when Lexington took his bike, but as Lex did not know how to ride it, it blew up. Vinny also remembers working for Cyberbiotics and being the first person to confront Goliath and Demona when they sabotaged Air Fortress 1. Vinny is working in a dockyard when Wolf starts to fight Goliath and Hudson there. Vinny notices and tries to take out his unnaturally large weapon from the bag, and instead his cart falls into the water. On the other hand, fighting Wolf and his possessed axe is seemingly becoming difficult for our gargoyles until Goliath and Hudson punch the werewolf together. The beaten wolf gets berated by his ancestor Hakon, who is the ghost that is linked to the battle axe. Hakon now possesses Wolf to fight the gargoyles. Meanwhile, Vinny has come out of the water and again tries to aim his weapon at the gargoyles. He remembers working as a Genu Tech security guard when Goliath abducted Savarius and Vinny lost his job. However, the gargoyles haven't waited for the flashback, and their fight with Wolf has already moved inside a shed of a steel plant. Vinny tries to climb into the building with his weapon, but its weight makes him fall. In the meantime, being possessed has made Wolf invincible as he becomes transparent or vanishes at will. Hakon also magically influences Hudson, and he attacks Goliath. This scene is a bit difficult to follow, but it seems that Hudson sees Wolf instead of Goliath and attacks him. On the contrary, Wolf doesn't approve of being possessed and threatens to throw the battle axe into fire, forcing Hakon to come out of his body and get back inside the weapon. As the battle between Wolf and the gargoyles reaches a nearby junkyard, Vinny again tries to aim his weapon at them. This time, he takes a position from a rooftop to ensure he does not fall off. Again, Vinny takes his sweet time while Wolf throws a large piece of junk, which accidentally hits a large water tank, drowning Vinny and his weapon. Wolf and the possessed axe corners Goliath, but Hudson intervenes. Hudson lures the axe to a magnetic conveyor belt machine that ultimately crushes both the axe and finally releases Hakon to the afterlife. Similarly, Goliath drives Wolf mad and manages to knock Wolf out by dropping several junkyard cars upon him. But wait, Vinny still has not resolved his vendetta, so he finally comes up in front of the gargoyles and pulls the trigger on his large weapon. The weapon throws banana cream cheese on Goliath's face, and as Vinny walks away satisfied, he hums the gargoyles' theme music. Now that justice is served on all fronts, let's look into what's going on with others. Turf. While Goliath, Hudson and Bronx are away for patrolling, the trio takes Angela out, and each tries to impress her. On their way, Angela notices a cyberbiotics airship that Vogel had once given to Thomas Broder and his goons in Prague. Taking cover, the gargoyles notice Brode, a blonde-haired woman named Sally, and another older man named Jack Danforth get down from the aircraft to ambush Tony Draken's chop shop. The chop shop is now run by Glasses, who sells dismembered car parts illegally. The turf war between the two gangs gets interrupted by the police as Brode escapes with his gang. Once in their aircraft, Brode and Jack wonder if there is a mole in their gang, and Sally gets angry at them, assuming they will blame her. On the other hand, the trio bickers over Angela while she worries as Goliath, Bronx and Hudson have still not returned. During the day, Matt and the police question Brode and his gang, but they deny all the allegations. Matt takes Brode and Sally to the police station for further questioning. However, Sally sneaks out while the police are distracted, and she gets into the attic. The gargoyles also wake up at the same time and get alarmed to see the intruder. However, Sally is none other than Elisa in disguise. Elisa tells them that she is undercover and asks them to follow her. Annoyed by the trio, Angela seeks advice from Elisa, who tells her that it's because they have come across a female gargoyle after 1,000 years. Elisa then returns to the precinct and seeks more time from Captain Chavez. Meanwhile, the turf war rages on as Draken still runs the mob world from behind bars. Brode and Sally are released only to find their lair blown up by fire. In retaliation, they try to capture a passenger train carrying weapons for Drakon. However, Draken's men are already prepared to shoot back. Glasses shoots at the hovercraft, but Draken's men are thrown off the train by the gargoyles. Glasses also jumps off, stating that if he is killed, more will replace him, which gives Brode the idea that he should kill Draken to win the turf war. Lex tries to be the hero and attempts to get on the hovercraft, but gets shot at. As Angela goes to catch him, she also gets attacked. She later shares her disappointment with the trio for not focusing on what's important and calling her Angie. Although Lex is shown to be interested in Angela, the character is eventually confirmed to have a same-sex preference and falls in love with Stagheart from the London clan, as Jack informs knows about Draken's cell block number. The hovercraft directly lands on the prison as Brode, Sally, and their gang break into it. The gargoyles also blow up the hovercraft before entering the prison. Sally tries to save Drakon, but the fool recognizes her and exposes her before Brode. Thankfully, the gargoyles are here as Elisa's backup. The two mafia bosses shoot at the gargoyles, but the gargoyles are able to subdue them quickly, and Elisa hands them over to the guards. The gargoyles return to the clock tower and apologize to Angela. Goliath and Hudson also return after fighting Wolf and Hakon. Angela kisses the trio, letting them know they should go slow as they try to woo her. Besides, she has 15 rookery sisters in Avalon. This interests the trio, and Brooklyn asks Goliath when they will have their Avalon adventure. Back at the prison, Draken gets a new roommate, Brode, and immediately starts a fight.
That the love has gone out of our relationship.
The Reckoning. The story begins with Goliath, Angela and Brooklyn witnessing Demona trying to escape a lab in a new powered suit. They manage to capture her and knock her out, but decide it's best to hold her as a prisoner in the labyrinth. Fang is also imprisoned in the adjoining cell, and Elisa doubts the arrangement. The Manhattan Clan promises to keep a watch at night, while the Mutates will do it during the day. Angela insists on being the first guard, and when Demona wakes up and asks her who she is, Angela tells Demona that she is her daughter. Demona tries to convince Angela to go against the humans, but Angela tells her about Princess Catherine and Tom, who took care of the hatchlings. Demona still doesn't care, and the family drama entertains Fang. When Lex is on watch, Demona releases a robotic bug from her belt that bites Lex and collects his DNA sample. Previously, a bug had bitten Elisa, and Talon complained that bugs were everywhere inside the labyrinth. The robotic bug brings the genetic material to Dr. Savarius, who now works for Tylog. We wonder what Xanatos thinks of this team-up. Is he really unaware, or doesn't care? 2 months after being locked up, Tylog finally breaks into Labyrinth to free Demona. Demona also frees Fang. Goliath and Talon follow them as they go and hide inside an amusement park. Soon, Goliath brings the whole clan, and as they enter the amusement park in different groups, they get captured by their own clones. The clones have inverted color schemes and devilish red eyes compared to their original counterparts. Demona introduces her clan to Goliath and Angela, and just like the Manhattan Clan, which has New York district names, Tylog's clan members are named after cities in California. So Lexington is Brentwood, Broadway's clone is Hollywood, Brooklyn's clone is Malibu, and Hudson's Burbank. However, unlike Goliath's clan, Tylog's clan members are more like minions than brothers. Tylog further reveals that Demona has known Angela as her daughter since they met in Paris. Feeling betrayed, Angela starts hating her mother, but Demona still doesn't want her to get hurt. Tylog now introduces his hidden mate, Delilah, who was created by combining DNA from Demona and Elisa. As Delilah attempts to kill Angela, Demona releases Goliath's restraints so that he can save Angela. A second bout of the fight begins between the two clans, and Talon defeats Fang, while Goliath and Tylog get into an intense battle. Demona further intervenes and seeks revenge on Tylog for trying to kill her daughter. The rest of the clan's teamwork works in their favor in beating the clones, who don't have a mind of their own. Demona urges Goliath to help Angela, who has done better on her own and has put Delilah in chains. As everyone watches Demona and Tylog fight on the roller coaster tracks, Angela worries about Demona, while the clones worry about their master, Tylog. The track breaks and falls into the pit of fire, and Angela cries, thinking that Demona might be dead. However, Goliath assures her that Demona has shown the first instance of goodness by trying to protect her, which is a positive beginning. Since the clones make the Manhattan Clan uncomfortable, Talon offers to take them to the labyrinth and help them think independently. Even though we are sure Demona survived, it would be excellent for some character growth from her.
My boy.
Possession. The episode begins with Xanatos and his robot gargoyles capturing Coldstone from the Himalayas. He brings Coldstone back to the eerie building and attempts to separate the souls within as a reward for the gargoyles. However, this proves difficult since Coldstone was created, infusing science and sorcery. Xanatos asks Owen to use his puck powers, but Owen can't do so unless he is protecting or training Alexander. Xanatos and Fox have to leave soon, presumably for an Illuminati meeting, and Owen has to be the babysitter, but he looks more than glad. Also, it's nice to see Owen cradle a baby, as it mellows down his straight-up character. It is, however, odd when Goliath and Hudson suddenly appear and help Coldstone out of the strappings. They take Coldstone back to the clock tower, and Goliath sprinkles magic powder on Bronx to make him more agreeable, while Hudson is uncharacteristically quiet. Angela and the trio volunteer to be the temporary vessel for the souls to help with the process. But when Lex questions how Goliath can cast magic spells for the task, Goliath sprinkles magic dust on Lex. Goliath uses magic incantations to help Othello and Desdemona get into Broadway and Angela's bodies, while Coldstone faints after the transfer. Goliath and Hudson return to the Erie building, and Goliath turns to Puck, while Hudson turns to infant Alexander. Now, this is weird for a baby to transform, but maybe we should assume that Alexander has significant magical powers, or that it was just Puck teaching the little one. Meanwhile, Brooklyn suggests that Othello and Desdemona spend some time together, and they glide away while Brooklyn orders Lex to be in charge. At the same time, another soul gets into Coldstone's body, and he wakes up only to bind and gag Lex. So when real Goliath and Hudson return, Coldstone lies that Xanatos has created new robots that must be destroyed. On the other hand, Brooklyn comments on how Othello and Desdemona won't be able to keep the bodies, and as they return to the clock tower, they find Lex tied and gagged. Lex tells them about Coldstone taking Goliath and Hudson to attack Xanatos. When Lex comments that it must be the evil one possessing Coldstone, Brooklyn exclaims that it's impossible. At the Eyrie building, Coldstone shows the two robots, Coldsteel and Coldfire, modelled after the two souls inhibiting Coldstone's body. Coldstone activates the robots, forcing Goliath and Hudson to fight them. The other gargoyles also arrive at the building and split into two groups. As Lex tries to make sense of the events, Brooklyn knocks him out. When Lex wakes up, a spirit possesses him. Othello and Desdemona also find Goliath and Hudson tied to a tree inside the building and wonder what's going on. After Othello gets stuck under a tree by Coldstone and Desdemona gets knocked out, Brooklyn finally reveals that he is Iago, possessing Brooklyn's body, and only wants Desdemona. He asks Coldstone to kill Broadway so that Othello can die with him. However, Iago gets attacked by Coldsteel, while Desdemona gets attacked by Coldfire. Viewers may find this difficult to keep track of. Obviously, we know Puck and Alexander are the hidden string pullers, but maybe the affair is getting a little out of hand. Well, why don't you tell us? The situation is resolved as Desdemona and Othello defeat the robots, and Iago feels that transferring his soul to the robot would be better. This allows Puck, who had possessed Coldstone's body, to ask his protege Alexander, who has possessed Lex, to transfer Iago to Coldsteel. As Brooklyn seems to remember everything Iago said or did, Desdemona and Othello also realize the need to let Angela and Broadway live their own life. They embrace for the last time before Alexander switches their body into Coldfire and Coldstone. As Coldsteel escapes, Coldstone and Coldfire leave to find and put an end to him. They promise to return once their mission is over. Alexander comes out of Lex's body and straight into Puck's arms. This event has also helped Lex and Alex form a bond, which will be shown later. Broadway also looks glad to be close to Angela while they are possessed. Puck explains that soul transfer was impossible without permission. He returns in time and transforms into Owen just before Xanatos and Fox return.
I've got the demon!
Hunter's Moon, Part 1. As you can guess, the Hunter introduced in the City of Stone story arc is back in this three-part season finale. It begins in 994 AD and is a revisit to the event of Demona scratching Gillicum Gain, who swears revenge on the Gargoyles. Cut to 1996, Elisa, dressed as Sally, gets surrounded by a group of crooks in a subway station. She boards the train, and the crooks also get in. The Manhattan Clan arrives, breaks through the train roof, pulls out the criminals, and hangs them outside the train. Despite Elisa revealing herself and hugging Goliath, the rest of the passengers are scared and complain to Matt Bluestone and the other police about the threat of gargoyles. Later, Captain Chavez calls Matt and Elisa to her office and informs Elisa that she is temporarily assigned to a day shift with a new partner. Elisa protests, but soon forgets it when she meets her handsome new partner, Jason Conover. Do we see Matt smirking? Well, we get it too, Matt. Jason and Elisa find thieves stealing a chemical called DI-7 from Xanatos Corporation warehouses beside the East Side River. The cops follow the thieves in a car chase and finally capture them at Central Park. Elisa is impressed by Jason and calls him Clyde, while Jason refers to her as Bonnie. Matt also questions Xanatos about the theft, who comments that the chemical is only a disinfectant. We definitely loved how Xanatos tried to teach his son to pronounce harassment as Matt was leaving. Elsewhere, Demona, in her human form Destin, interviews a woman named Robin Corrie for Nightstone Unlimited. We wonder what happened to Tylog. A staff member informs Destin that the thieves have failed to steal the DI-7 chemical, and she gets furious. However, it's nearly sundown, and she lets the staff go before she transforms. Elisa also meets the Gargoyles as they wake up, and they talk about Jason and her new shift. She asks them to look out for another attempt at two of Xanatos Corporation's warehouses. Meanwhile, Xanatos has another visitor as he stands atop Castle Wyvern. The man introduces himself as John Carter, a reporter, and questions Xanatos about the gargoyle statues. However, Xanatos is clever enough to identify ulterior movies. He is somewhat of a pioneering figure, and so he notices John picking up a stone skin from the roof that must have been left by the gargoyles a year back, or maybe two. Time has been difficult to calculate, with the Avalon tour breaking up the Manhattan story arc. Disney also faced significant trouble with the show. For example, it was originally scheduled to be released once a week on Fridays, but then Season 3 of Goliath Chronicles was released in Saturday morning format, but we will get onto that later. As Goliath, Angela and Hudson watch one of the warehouses, an aircraft appears in front of them. 3 new humans with the hunter's mask, and one of them, a woman, emerge from the aircraft and shoot at them. It's not difficult to assume who the people behind the mask are, since we got 3 new character introductions earlier. But let's also leave it at that. The hunters mistake Angela for Demona and shoot at her as she falls unconscious. Goliath and Hudson are able to get free of the restraints put on them, but the hunters escape. They also realize that the gargoyle they have hurt is not Demona. In the other warehouse, the trio and Bronx find Demona breaking and entering to get the DI-7 chemical canister. Their confrontation leads to the warehouse blowing up and Demona escaping. As all of them return to the clock tower, Angela is still unconscious, and Goliath swears vengeance on whoever tried to harm his daughter.
Why are you here? Are you in league with these hunters?
Hunter's Moon, Part 2. The second segment of the Season 2 finale starts in 1495 AD in Florence, Italy, where Demona steals a stone tablet but gets pursued by someone from the Hunter clan. The hunter uses a glider to follow Demona and remarks that being a hunter has been a 500-year legacy in their family. As Demona escapes secretly, the hunter declares that his descendants will eventually get revenge. In 1996, Angela's condition is worsening, and Elisa arrives for her duty. She resuscitates Angela with CPR just before the gargoyles turn to stone. As Matt is about to leave the police precinct, he gets surrounded by several reporters, including John, who questions him about the gargoyles, but Matt brings up UFO sightings and aliens on Easter Island to distract them. Elisa pulls Jason before she gets interviewed and takes him to visit the warehouse trail for Demona. Jason asks why she looks worried, and Elisa talks about a close one being hurt. Jason shares the same emotion and gets too close to Elisa before she pushes him away. At the warehouse, Elisa meets Owen, but she finds it hard to believe that Xanatos and Owen have mended their ways and have nothing to do with it. But shouldn't everyone be allowed to change? At Nightstone Unlimited, Destiny shows Robin around the office and introduces her to Dr. Savarius, who is now working for Destine or Demona. Savarius shows Robin a virus that can either cure diseases or create one for mass extermination. Robin's interest in the subject impresses Destiny as she stores the virus in a locker that has a small stone gargoyle and the artifact that Demona stole in 1495. As the sun sets, the gargoyles wake up, and Goliath wastes no time seeking the hunters. Not finding the gargoyles in the clock tower, Elisa prepares to leave, but Jason meets her again. She takes him back to her apartment for dinner, and the two share a kiss, which Goliath sees. Goliath is hurt and shocked. He also overhears Elisa telling Jason she has someone she likes but can't be with him. Jason leaves, and so does Goliath, but he notices the hunter's aircraft and is soon joined by Brooklyn and Lexington. Together they break into the aircraft, while the two hunters aboard the plane are already aware that the gargoyles are following them. Goliath and his gang are surprised to see Demona inside the aircraft with her laser gun. They get into a fight, but the hunters capture and imprison them. Although Goliath, Brooklyn and Lex don't believe Demona, she declares that the Hunter family has an age-old vendetta and has killed all the Scotland gargoyles. As Demona and Goliath seek revenge, they plan to work together and escape confinement. Do you know that Greg Wiseman wanted Demona to feature in an episode of a spin-off series for the movie Atlantis: The Lost Empire? Although the series was cancelled before airing, the unfinished episode was completed and screened at the Gargoyles fan convention called The Gathering. After escaping their cell, Demona and Goliath land a hard punch on the two hunters and leave for their separate ways as Brooklyn and Lex wonders why Goliath let her go. The two hunters now take off their mask to reveal that they are Robin and John, while their leader arrives and reveals himself to be Jason. The three are revealed to be siblings. Jason is furious as the gargoyles have escaped, and Robin points out there might be more gargoyles. John is against attacking them and realizes that Goliath's clan is only angry as Jason harmed his daughter. But Jason is overpowered by hatred and wants to kill them all. Robin tracks them to the clock tower, and they decide to blow it up, while she informs them about discovering that Destiny is Demona. They wonder if the Manhattan clan is also involved in the sorcery. The episode ends with Elisa entering the precinct, the clock tower getting blown up, and the Hunter brothers getting inside it. It is also the first episode that ends with a to-be-concluded message.
Brooklyn! Jason, look out! No!
Hunter's Moon, Part 3. The finale begins in 1980, when Jason's father, Charles Canmore, tries to kill Demona as she steals the small praying gargoyle statue from Notre Dame Cathedral. It was September 28th and the Hunter's Moon when he left his children to follow Demona, but ultimately fell to his death. 16 years later, the Canmores blow up the clock tower, and Jason enters the precinct in his hoverbike to rescue Elisa. He injects her with a tranquilizer and drops her to the apartment. The gargoyles have survived, thanks to Lex identifying the tracker and guiding the clan to the attic before the attack. However, Lex and Hudson still got injured. John spies on the gargoyles and hides the truth from his sister, but she doesn't believe the gargoyles have perished. The gargoyles go to Elisa's apartment, and Goliath won't listen to anybody as he wants revenge. He asks Lex to use the tracker to find where the hunters are hiding. Meanwhile, John makes the gargoyles public and reports them as the culprit for the destruction of the clock tower. Elisa refutes the claim and complains about Jason to Captain Chavez, and Matt supports her. They find documents proving Jason was never a cop, and since his father's death, the three siblings have lived a violent life. Robin has obtained a disc from Nightstone Unlimited, while Destiny is seemingly on a working vacation. It appears Demona has her own heinous plans to execute. Goliath arrives at a dam, but still can't find the hunters, so he switches on the tracker, making the hunters' airship come out of the water. As Goliath fights the Canmore siblings, he is soon joined by Elisa and Broadway. Elisa tries to stop Jason and Goliath fighting, but instead, she falls into the dam along with Jason. The gargoyles fail to save her and assume she is dead, and so does John, who now hates all the gargoyles for his brother's death. Although Jason and Elisa have survived, the gargoyles mourn for Elisa and await the next night, which is another Hunter's Moon, to get their revenge. Robin also finds that Demona is planning to exterminate all humans by combining the new virus with DI-7 and using the praying gargoyle and Medici tablet. Robin and John follow her to a cathedral, while the Manhattan clan follows them. Robin and John appear in a metasuit as they fight the gargoyles. The ensuing fight enables Demona to sneak into another room, but Brooklyn follows her. On the outside, police, media, and the public surround the cathedral, and the public are on the verge of rioting, with Matt somehow stalling the situation. The premises of this plot are well-rounded for a series finale, which was the writers' and producers' actual plan. Before the scene turns into a massacre, Jason and Elisa arrive, and it looks like Jason has finally let go of his hatred. A deleted scene featured Elisa questioning Jason about his grievances against the Gargoyles, and Jason confessing. They don't know why. Ironically, John is blinded by hatred and aims at Goliath, but Jason comes in between and gets shot. John is shocked by what he has done, but just like Demona, he feels it's all the Gargoyles' fault. As Elisa and Robin tend to Jason, Goliath goes to catch Demona. He breaks the praying gargoyle stone, ensuring her spell will kill both humans and gargoyles. Demona throws the potion into the air, but Goliath catches it. Realizing Goliath just saved everyone, even Robin lets go of the hatred. But not John, who goes after Demona as both vanish into the night. On the outside, Matt is forced to call in the choppers that aim at the gargoyles, but Xanatos appears in his helicopter and takes the gargoyles away to Castle Wyvern. Later, Elisa visits Jason in the hospital, who has been paralyzed down the spine. Elisa tells him that she will be by his side, but there's someone more important. She goes to Castle Wyvern, where Xanatos assures her that the feud is over, and the castle will be the gargoyles' safe home. As the rest of the clan rejoices in being back, Elisa meets Goliath. They confess their feelings and share a kiss just before dawn, and that's how Season 2 of the Gargoyles ends. All the loose ends are more or less tied with the season finale as the story continues through the SLG comics. However, do not forget to check out the Season 3 exploration on our channel, as there is still some story to tell. Season 2 has served as a backdoor pilot for many ultimately cancelled spin-offs, yet it's been one with the most extraordinary stories to tell. What do you think are the best plots from Season 2? Which Avalon Tour spin-off would you have liked to see if it ever gets made? Do let us know in the comments.